All right, good evening, Council. Welcome to the November 15th, 2021 Battleground City Council study session. Tonight, we're going to be discussing our 2022 budget, and I will go ahead and turn this over to our Finance and Information Services Director, Megan Lowry. Megan.
Good evening, Council. So this evening, we're going to be going through the American Rescue Plan Act funding and what we have included in the budget, as we have some final numbers, as well as our property tax levy. We're going to go through some property tax 101, some illustrations, as well as some examples. And then we'll also have some opportunity to discuss the 22 budget and questions and any changes that Council would like to see. So starting off with the American Rescue Plan Act funding, the city is to receive overall $5.9 million between 21 and 22. This was a direct allocation from the federal government for us to use in relation to the COVID pandemic. The majority of the uses, as we've talked about before, are for impacts of COVID, but in addition to that, they also offer the ability to do water, sewer infrastructure, as well as some broadband services if you have the ability to meet those program requirements. For the city of Battleground, looking at what the most long-term impact would be for citizens, that would be for our water sewer infrastructure. And what this would do is it would alleviate some higher rate increases once those projects, both for our water and our sewer, come to be both the parallel force main as well as the Paradise Point projects. When those come on board to where we have to pay for those projects, we're hoping to be able to use a large portion of our system development charges, which is what the developers pay to connect to our services, with the ability to use these funds to pay for some projects that are in our plan. It will help free up some of those funds to be able to pay down what those projects will cost. And we'll get into the details of those in a second. We are also able to use the revenues for a revenue replacement. However, if we decide to go down that path, it is a all or nothing. And if we decided to do that, it wouldn't be just money that we could say, okay, yes, this is revenue replacement and let it sit. We would actually have to allocate it and spend it still by December 31st, 2024. It just takes the requirements of COVID off of it and turns it towards governmental services. So what we would normally use our general fund for. So looking at the projects that we've briefly talked about previously, we have the Equalization Basin, which what this does is, and Mark's on the line if we have more detailed questions, as this is his area of expertise. But the Equalization Basin thins out the flow. So then once it can go the 9 miles over to the Salmon Creek treatment plant, it's not sludge, essentially. We did need to do this. This was part of our sewer plan at some point in time. He actually was able to work with the folks that were doing the pre-design on this and get it to be a much less project. Initially, we had it in our SDCs or in our capital improvement plan for several $1,000,000. But what the plan is, and I don't know if you can see it very well, the aeration basin that's to the right in this map will become the Equalization Basin. So they're able to modify that to turn it into the Equalization Basin without doing the expansion that's highlighted in yellow. It's, again, going to meet the requirements. It's significantly less expensive at $400,000 to $600,000. And then for water, we also have in our plan a water reservoir. We've had it in a plan for a number of years. And it will be needed regardless of us going with the Paradise Point or not, as it's what keeps the water and able to keep the pressure in the system. And this project is pretty significant at $3.4 million to $3.6 million. This was originally, back when it was first put into plan, about $1.4 million, but as costs of doing construction have increased, the inflation costs, so has this project. And then also with the water, in meeting with our water plan, well 4, 5, and 6, drilling and getting more water from those existing wells and helping to be more self-sufficient in producing our own water, that would be $1.75 million. I know that was a lot of information and I did not go into a lot of details, so I want to open it up for any questions related to these projects, the funding as a whole, questions, concerns, anything.
Council, feel free to jump on in.
Megan, just to correct you, it's 18 miles to the Columbia, not 9.
Thank you.
So it flows. So Mark, if it's, so I understand we send 100,000 gallons an hour down the line. Is that still correct, roughly?
Yeah, so in the summer, it's just a little over 1 million a day. And then in the winter, it can get up to like 3 to 4 million a day. So essentially that's what the EQ does, is it meters it in that big winter storm to keep us under our 4.4 that we have in capacity at the pump station and force main.
Okay, so by adding, we're adding another, I'm sorry, is it 3/4 of,
Yeah, it's a 0.65 million gallons.
and that will take us to what year, roughly, do you anticipate?
So what we're trying to shoot for is the parallel force main happens in about 2035. So with our 3.5, we run out of capacity in about 2030. So what that additional 0.65 is buys us those 5 years until the parallel force main is online. And then those sort of the capacity concerns go away.
So it would be in tandem. I'm trying to envision how everything leaves the basin. How does, when it comes in, how does it leave? Does it leave the 3.5 million and go to the aeration and then go down?
Yeah, so up at the kind of northwest corner of the blue box, there's the headworks. And so everything dumps into that headworks. And then from there, it flows into the existing EQ basin, which is kind of the purple box. And then the green pump station pumps it out down to Salmon Creek. So
Okay.
Essentially for the new blue box, there's a pipe that ties those two together. And as the purple box fills up, it flows back into the blue box. So getting essentially what we're doing with this project is bringing it up to ecology standards, which may include putting a roof over the top of it like the purple box has.
Okay, and that will bring us up, so we don't have to worry about ecology coming down and knocking us around.
Correct. Yeah, that, like I said, that essentially gets us to 2035 when the new force main should be online, and then any of those concerns go away.
And then 2 weeks ago, we talked about the water reservoir up on the hill. That would make the fourth one on the hill.
It's the fifth, I believe. I think there's 3 small, a big, and then this would be the 5th one.
Would this be the largest?
Yes, this would be the largest by far.
And when we first started talking about it, as Megan mentioned, it was actually, I think it was between 1.5 million and 2 million. So obviously, if we wait any more, we could actually be even higher. I assume 4 and some change or beyond. By adding this, will this take us out to 2040? Would we need to do any more storage?
No, this buys us everything we need through the 20-year of the water system plan.
And then the wells. I believe Mr. Munson asked last time about, how the PUD has no problems and we have ample problems. You talked about there was new technology. Is this new technology for 1.75 million?
So the 4 and 5 are in the shallower aquifer where we don't have those issues. 6 is in a different part of the deeper aquifer where we haven't had as many issues. It doesn't pull out the same amount of water. We're only about 200 gallons per minute, but I think based on kind of that lower flow out, we haven't had the same issues. What this project would add is essentially the treatment for the water. So when this well was running, we often got brown water calls just because it would pull up the iron and the manganese, and adding the filters similar to what we already have at 7, 8, and 9 would address those issues, and give us, like I said, about 2 in a like a hot weather event. You could pump it to 250 and probably be fine, but we would run it at 2 just to prevent, trying to pull up too much of the iron and that sort of thing.
So $1.75 million is going to buy us filters?
No, it's the 500,000 would be for the filters and the necessary upgrades at that. And then the additional is for the wells next to 4 and 5.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, Megan, pass it back to you.
Okay, well, if there's no other questions about this American Rescue Plan Act funding, the grant itself does require that we obligate the funds, which can be construed a couple different ways. However, in order to keep with the most conservative and being in compliance with the granting requirements, I'd like to bring a resolution back that's separate from the budget that obligates the funds specifically for the purposes that we're intending to use the funds for. If anything happens with these projects or something goes to where we don't think we're going to get to the maximum grant, we can always have that revenue replacement and governmental services to fall back upon that we could use the funds left over. But with these 3 projects, we will be at the 5.9 million on the nose almost. So are there any concerns with doing that? Any other thoughts of how you would like to use these funds?
Council, any concerns on Megan bringing back a resolution as she just stated?
Mr. Mayor, I think it's a wonderful idea, but we never really, I never saw that I recall another option or any options other than this. I mean, I like the water and the sewer are most important. I understand that, but we never saw any other options for this money, did we, Ms. Erdman? No. So do you have any other options?
If we look at what we can use the funds for, we can use them for anything related to COVID. I know we talked about a utility assistance program, or if there was something along the lines of if you wanted to do granting to businesses like with the CARES funding. A lot of the uses are pretty identical to the CARES funding that we talked about in 20, which had its positives and negatives depending upon how you looked upon it. And it was difficult to get those funds out the door ultimately. And looking at what the intention of this program is of long-term impacts, this was honestly the most attractive option that we had. Again, there is that revenue replacement option to where we could then, instead of doing it for COVID and impact purposes or even infrastructure, it would be governmental services, which would supplement the general fund itself. My concern with doing that is ultimately we have a healthy fund balance in the general fund, that if we were going to do something additional, then we'd be able to do it that way. And even taking those funds and spending it on a transportation project just based upon the timing of how long it takes to get transportation projects specifically done, just due to the permitting and so forth, the concern of being able to get it done by the time frame of 2026 is there. Ultimately, beyond that, there's not a whole lot of options unless, like I said, unless you've heard of someone else doing something that I'm unaware of. I know that the majority of folks around the area, or at least our counterparts, other cities, are doing something very similar and doing it for infrastructure projects. Again, because it's not something that comes around all the time to get grant funding for those projects. But
I have no problem with it. I would ask that the city do a little math so that we can tell the folks, our water payers and sewer payers, by doing this, we've cut down your future bill by what we estimate to be this amount of money. Is that possible?
Absolutely. Yes. We actually, in looking back, while Mark was doing the water system plan, we had to do basically a rate revenue comparison. And one piece that I had actually forgotten about is within that time frame for Paradise Point, we had bond issue for the Paradise Point project, depending upon what that project actually ends up being and if we get grants funds for that. So by using these funds for that, we will definitely be saving ratepayers money. And It's usually about 0.5% per million. So based upon what that debt service is, I'll take a look and let you guys know what that is so we can definitely tell folks that this is what we're ultimately saving you.
Perfect. Thank you again.
Anything else?
Council, with just a quick thumbs up, are you okay with Megan bringing back a resolution? Okay. Right, Megan, I think we have consensus there to bring back that resolution for our next agenda item.
Perfect. I will do that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
so moving on to property tax. So this is a property tax illustration. Ultimately, the circle represents the budget levy base. So what the city actually receives. This is completely, these numbers are an example. These aren't actuals. So say in this example, the budget levy is $3,240. Within that, this is where those funds, this is basically the city of Battleground of where we're receiving those funds. The assessed value of our city in this example is $2.4 million. If we take that $2.4 million and we split it 8 ways, each individual property owner is going to pay the same amount, $405. Now, the piece of this that's hard for folks to conceptualize or understand is that assessed value in this example could be $2 and every property owner would still pay the same amount if it was split evenly amongst all 8. And the flip side, it could be 3 times that amount and be 6 million, and it would still be $405. Ultimately, assessed value, while it may seem that it's what fluctuates your property taxes or not your property taxes, what it's based upon is our levy. So our levy in and of itself, that's all the city collects. So when folks get their assessed value from the assessor and they see it increased, the thing that they forget is that everyone else's within the city has also increased. So their piece of the pie hasn't significantly changed. It's just a little bit different based upon property values within the city, essentially what each person is paying for their piece of the pie. The only way that this increases is when you as a council increase it by the 1% allowed per state law, or we get new construction, or we do an annexation. New construction and annexation, the important piece to note about that, they come into the city and increase our budget levy base, so the size of the circle, by the previous year's levy. So as each year, as that levy rate goes down, your new folks come in at a lesser value. So ultimately what happens is that, yes, you may have a large amount of growth, but if your levy hasn't kept up with ultimately what it's costing and assessed value, kept up with assessed value, then your new folks are coming in ultimately cheaper than they would have 10 years prior. So this is the formula: levy base divided by AV times 1,000 gives you the millage rate. So this is just an example of, you take the 3,240 divided by the 2.4 million divided by 1,000 to get the $1.35 millage rate. Again, the other piece I want to stress with this is that if the only change is AV and the levy stays the same, there's no 1%, there's no construction, no annexation, the amount the city collects will remain $3,240, even again, if AV triples or quadruples. So it all comes back to that levy base. So we've talked about this a few times, and I wanted to pull some examples just to show you where ultimately the market is. So there's 3 different values when we're looking at homes. I'm sure there's more values than that, but for this example, we're just going to talk about 3. So you have your county assessed value, the bank appraisal value, and your market value. Ultimately, these can be 3 very different rates. So of the 4 examples, I just went to one of our lovely sales sites, Zillow, and picked out some homes that have recently sold within our city limits, not looking for specifics, just pulling some as I saw them. So our first home, it sold in September for $413,000, but the county's assessed value is $327,000. And you can see the different examples as we go down. They range from an $86,000 difference all the way up to a $205,000 difference. Now, on the flip side, say that the market tanks. The assessed value isn't going to tank as fast as the market. Like when we had the recession, for example, that was one of those times where you will see the county assessed value is going to be higher than the market value, because the assessed value can't keep up with the market, because the market is always ebbing and flowing. They do an overall look at everyone's property value annually. However, they don't physically do an inspection or a true value of your home except for every 3 years. So it's more based upon things that I'm not an expert in. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not an assessor. I'm not an appraiser, but they have a methodology for how they do what they do. And they do have a process to go through if you disagree with what they've come up with for your value. But ultimately, as everyone's homes go up, or as one home goes up, 9 times out of 10, other folks' homes go up as well. So ultimately, their piece of the pie doesn't change. So taking a look at our property tax and what we're proposing for 2022, we have 3 options for you. What you have tonight later on at the actual council meeting is we did present you with the max option of 1.64%, which takes the 1% as well as our banked capacity from last year. But you also have the option of doing a no increase and a 1% increase. We do have to pass this by November 30th in order to be in compliance with state law. So we have to set the levy. So we just need to decide which that the council would like to go for. So you can see that for new construction, the new homes that were built, it came in at $165,816. And this is based upon quite a significant amount of new assessed value. new assessed value of $128,000 of new homes. And not 128,000, excuse me, 128 million. Getting my thousands and millions mixed up here, too many zeros. So ultimately, that amount of homes came in at 165,000. Now, if that same assessed value had come in at City of Camas, their levy is at almost $4. So that amount of assessed value in a different jurisdiction is going to be worth a significant amount more than what it is currently in Battleground at the $1.29 this year's levy rate. So that's just something to keep in mind, that that's ultimately why those folks have stayed high on their levy rate versus us, because our levy rate is just so low that when the new homes come in, it doesn't keep up with assessed value and the growth that we're seeing. I mean, if you look at Ridgefield, I believe their assessed value is significant as well, but their levy rate is below $1. So looking at it that way, so I'm giving you 3 examples here of 3 different house values. So this year's levy rate is $1.29. If we look at a 0% increase, the levy rate would be $1.20. And then the 1% would be $1.21. And the 1.64% would be $1.22. In all 3 examples, the levy rate is decreasing. You're either decreasing by 9 cents, 8 cents, or 7 cents. So when you look at that and you go over to the far right 3 columns, you can see that a home that was valued in 2021 at $321,000, what they paid versus what they would pay with the new levy rate. So they'd see a decrease of either $29, $25, or $23. Now, if their assessed value for 2022 increased, say 7%, then they would still see a $2 decrease at 0. They'd see a $1.69 increase at $1.21 and a $4.20 increase at $1.22. So then looking at what it would be for 400,000, it's ultimately the same sort of decreases at, depending upon the 5% increase to their assessed value, 6%, 7%. So if their piece of the pie has increased just based upon their home value of what the county assessor has said, then yes, they're going to see a decrease until you get into the 8% range, and then they're going to see increases. And then the same with 600,000, it's the same percentage increase. They won't see an increase until the 7 to 8% range, depending upon which option council chooses. So taking it a step further, we actually have a former council member who tracked his property tax since he bought his home in 1992. And with it, if you look at the top graph, you'll see that when he first built his home in 1992, the assessed or the levy rate was $4.35. And you can see as time has gone on from 1992 until now, so over a 30-year period, it has declined. Now, if you look at assessed value, you see it's an inverse relationship. Assessed value has gone up. And even when you had the dip in 06 through 2010, when levy rate went down and assessed value went up, that's where that dip came from. It's kind of interesting to see it this way, just because it's a visual representation that as your assessed value goes up, your levy rate goes down, just because the 1% can't keep up with assessed value and growth. So then in looking at what they paid in property tax, this is even more interesting to me, because they started out paying in 1992, $483. Ultimately, they have not seen a significant spread. The lowest they paid was in that 2003 range, which they paid $305 in property tax to the city of Battleground. And then for the proposed increase of 1.64%, they'd pay us $474. So keeping within a $200 range over a 30-year period. So then the question came to me, okay, well, in 1992, $1 was definitely not $1 of 2022. So what was that in 1992? So I have an inflation chart. So in 1992, $1 was worth, or not $1, the $483 was worth almost $1,000. It was $983. Today's money back then. So as you can see, it's just declined. And then we've kind of flatlined out as inflation has gotten more steady. But it's just an interesting thing to see visually what somebody's own home has done over the course of 30 years. So another thing to think about is when folks get their property taxes is that City of Battleground is one piece of their property tax bill. And this gives you an example of what it would look like. Our little slice of the pie, $410 or 13% of their overall property tax bill. Because you have the state schools, the local school district, the county, the library, the cemetery, and now Fire District 3. So then taking it another step, when we think about how do we fund things, and this is going to look familiar from when we were doing our presentations a couple years ago. So the citizens, they pay their utility tax, property tax, and sales tax. That goes into the general fund, and then that pays for police, streets, parks, community development, along with all the support departments, finance, admin, clerk, human resources, court, legal, fire marshal, business licensing, building, engineering, city manager's office, communications, and public info. So it pays for a lot of things. So then what does that look like in comparison to our other cities? So this actually started when we were thinking about what are comparable cities. And when I had heard that arbitrators consider assessed value to be what your comparison is, that to me, as someone who funds everything or looks at how to fund everything, didn't sit right. So I was like, okay, well, let's look at it and looking at that trifecta of what are these other cities that are considered our comparable cities collecting. So in looking at what they collected in total property tax and sales tax and business and occupation tax, what's their assessed value and what's their population? I took and put in their total revenue, and these are the things that ultimately fund the general fund, at least as the core. That's where the majority of revenues for all of these jurisdictions are coming from, even though it may be split out differently. Then I took and divided that by the population to get a per resident revenue. Ultimately, Battleground was at the bottom. We are about $481 per resident in as far as being able to fund our programs within the general fund. And then when you look across at what's our property tax rank, or sales tax rank, or business occupation tax rank, as well as our assessed value rank, you can see we're in, we're below the average at 10 to 11. And then with our assessed value though, we're up in the middle of the pack at 7. What's a kicker though, is that we're number 4 in population. So that tells me we should really be up higher in this chart as far as what it costs to ultimately do things. And then again, like I said, we're at the bottom for the per resident rank. And you can see our friends in Camas are up there at number 3 because they're number 1 in a lot of different areas. They do not collect a business and occupation tax due to the fact that they're collecting almost 16 million in property taxes with an assessed value of 4.9 million. And they're not much higher than us in population. So just an interesting chart, just wanted to share it with you as it was extremely interesting to me in looking at what are truly, how do you determine your comparable cities? So with all that said, like I said earlier, we need to adopt a property tax ordinance at either the 0%, 1%, or 1.64% by November 30th. There is the motion for adoption to go before council tonight of the 1.64%. However, at that time, council may choose to do one of the other 2 options, as long as we ultimately pass something this evening, or we may have to come back for a special meeting. So with that said, does anybody have any questions about property tax for 2022 or property taxes in general?
Council, feel free to jump on in.
I got a question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, Chief.
Megan, can you go back one slide? Have we ever put that out?
No, I just created this. So no.
I think that is something that we should put out. We hear all the time in our city, in this area, that we are the highest taxed. We have the highest water fees. We have all this stuff. In fact, I was talking to my brother-in-law who lives over in Vancouver, but he's in the county, out on like Ward Road, 164th area. And he said his water bill, just his water bill, is $400 a month because they are contracted to the city of Vancouver. And so they pay that extra fee. And I don't think we do. I think we're doing better. I think we can continue to do better on putting out these type of things to show people, because they always think that they're the highest taxed of the entire state, or at least the region. And this shows that it isn't even close. So, and I think the other thing that's important too is that we look at that assessed value when we're looking at things too, and see where we're at with an assessed value. So I like that chart. I would love to see that put out in detail, whether it goes in a water bill or whatever we do, but continue to put those out. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
And I will note that these are all 2020 numbers. So that's why you're seeing our AV is at 2.4 versus what it was for 2021.
Anybody else? All right, I'm not seeing anybody else chime in. Megan, thank you. The only thing I will say is
Not done.
No, I was gonna
sorry.
mention on this. Yeah, no, I know you're not done. It's just amazing how, because I think it was last year our property tax levy rate went from 134 to 129, and now if we take basically the maximum, it'll drop again from 129 to 122. Yeah, which is, it's just, again, I agree with Councilmember Bowman. I mean, the chart that you created and what I just stated, we need to get that out to the public because it's an amazing story, frankly. So anyways, enough. Go ahead.
It was really eye-opening for us too when we got, are going to the table, especially with arbitration and figuring out, looking at these comparables, and we have to be competitive in this market as well. And I think it was eye-opening over the last few years of not consistently taking that 1% and gaining the additional new construction dollars that we're falling farther and farther behind. And it was eye-opening when Megan put this together. So it was a good exercise.
Yeah, it's interesting, and looking at us being with city governments for so long, and ultimately when you don't take the 1%, the only folks it really helps is the new people who come to town, because they're ultimately, it's kind of like a system development charge, right? Because they're coming in, but they're not coming in at what it's truly costing to serve them as their share of the city. Now they're coming at a lesser value than the folks who've been here for 30 years. So it's something to keep in mind too. You're ultimately only really helping those new folks who come in versus the people who've been there. So, okay, so moving on. So as far as the 22 budget itself, we do have it coming, the preliminary budget, to council tonight for our first public hearing. The second one will be on December 6th. In comparison to what we presented and council has a copy of at the 2 meetings ago, the 19th, I believe, of October, we did have to add $90,000 to development review for engineering due to the fact that unable to backfill vacant positions, as well as kind of a change of how we're going to do that. Those are all pass-through fees, so it's not anything directly related to the general fund. The general fund is not going to pay that. It's just going to flow through there as an in and out of 90,000. So just upping that from the 30 that was originally in the budget up to adding another 90,000 to that. So with that being said, that's the only change we have made based upon what we originally went over with you, as well as what you had the ability to look over. So just want to point out a couple things. The budget, we do have to pass it by December 31st. And then any changes or adjustments can be made now before it comes back on December 6th. That way it's ready to go for adoption. So if there's any concerns about the budget or any changes, discussions, things you want taken out prior to the 6th, now would be the time to do that. So then I can prepare that. So the ordinance, when it comes to you in the packet for the 6th meeting, is good to go. So if there's any questions or discussion that you want to have now would be a great time to have it.
right, council, any, yes, Councilmember DeRochers.
So you mean like right now? Right now, right now?
Right now, if you have any questions or concerns, now would be a great time.
Okay, just making sure I'm understanding you correctly. I just have a question. If we were to commit to some of the positions, can we do them on like a trial basis? Like, are they contract, like union contracts or anything like that, where we could just try it out for a budget cycle and see if we really do need those positions?
You always have the ability as a council, even now, if you wanted to remove a position and reorganize, you have that ability. So even with the folks you have now that have been here a significant amount of time, that's ultimately what the budget process is that you're authorizing the number of FTE positions. And then what we would do with that on the backside of union contracts and how that works out with staff, obviously, it's a little bit more tricky. However, you as council have that right.
Okay, so with that in mind, I'm a little more open-minded on seeing the positions in action, like seeing if it is what we need. I think I'm more likely to do that than just vote no, as long as I know that it's something that if it doesn't work out, if it doesn't benefit us like we thought it would, that we could eliminate it the next go around. So I just wanted some clarification. Thank you.
And just to build upon that too, we're always constantly looking at our positions and trying to figure out if there's ways we can provide service more efficiently. So we have gone back through even existing positions and modified those. For example, we're doing one right now in the police department to make it a dual functioning position so they can do multiple jobs. So we're constantly evaluating and looking at that too. So we'll continue to do that each year with our strategic plan as well. So.
All right, thanks. Anybody else want to chime in with input to Megan on the budget process? All right.
Mayor, I got one for you.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
With the influx of emails that we received today about Fifth and that being on the budget on Northwest Fifth, do you have a backup plan, Aaron? If the council chooses to remove that project from the budget?
Backup plan meaning?
Well, if we removed that Northwest Fifth project from the budget, that's a $900,000+ impact. Do you have a backup plan for replacement since your budget has to be balanced?
We would just remove it at this point, and the construction wouldn't happen. So, or the design piece, because that's for the design. So.
And it's a grant funded project. So we couldn't reallocate that without going back through those channels.
All right, thank you.
All right, anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So on that Mr. Munson just brought up, that's allocated through the budget, but that's state funding that we're using that was part of the Connecting Washington money, correct?
Yeah, and we are basing all of our lobbying efforts on going after the remaining dollar amount for that project. So if we were to remove that, that becomes a lot bigger conversation on what we plan on doing with the legislature and with wrapping up that project, because it was a multiple phase project and that was part of the design.
Yes. So there is a chance though on that, if we remove that the state just sweeps that and doesn't give it to us anyways, because of the issues that they've already had with the state and the Connecting Washington, and not being able to, inflation, those type of things. So most likely they would take that money back and just allocate it somewhere else. We would not be able to take that money and say, or would we be able to take that money and say, hey, we ran over on this project, we need it over here?
I imagine we would just utilize what's left, because we really don't have all of that section of the project funded. That's really what we're looking for, because that's the last phase. So, and Mark could probably speak to that a little bit, but I think we would just utilize what we do have left to finish out the earlier phases of the project.
Yeah,
So-
essentially
Yeah, go ahead.
essentially the first projects are using, whatever they cost. So the next up, 503, 502, 15th and 12th, they'll use, whatever they use. And then the remaining will be for 5th Street.
So I think that as we discuss that tonight, we need to make that clear, because I do know in reading those letters, people think we should just take the 900,000 and extend Onsor if we should do, but we can't do that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So it would be lost 900,000 worth of lobbying efforts and worth of money that that the state has given to us to improve our infrastructure here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Cherish, jump on in.
I was just wondering, can we recap why this Fifth Street is important to the whole plan itself, with the removing the intersection there by Fred Meyers, and just the big picture of it all and why it's important? If it is important, I assume.
I will let Mark go through that.
Cherish, I'm wondering if, I think your question is a great question. I'm wondering if it would be better for maybe to ask that question maybe after or during the mayor's report, or just because they'll get more, if more people are going to attend our 7 o'clock meeting, perhaps they'll listen to the explanation, and maybe not a lot of them are attending our informal study session. But I'm totally fine if you want that explanation explained right now. So I'm just a suggestion. So
I don't mind hearing it twice if we want to talk about it later too.
that works.
So ultimately, what the goal of the project was to relieve congestion at 503, 502. And so there's been a number of projects to do that. You saw the first projects, which was to eliminate the signal at 12th, which essentially was causing backup into the intersection. You've got the couple projects that kind of address issues because of that. So, there's more traffic now at 15th. There's more traffic on 12th going through First. And so the projects address sort of those issues that were created by removing that signal at 12th. You kind of now have the middle project, which is actually doing the improvements at 503, 502, adding the right turn lanes, adding the dual left turn lanes in the north and south direction, increasing the capacity of that intersection. The final project is essentially to address the students that are coming from the high school and using that intersection. So obviously Battleground High School brings kids in from the city, but everyone in North County that's part of the Battleground School District comes down from there, which means a lot of those people use 503, and the kind of easiest way leaving the high school to get on 503 is to go through that intersection. So the goal of 5th Street is to essentially take those kids from the high school, get them onto 503 where they can bypass that intersection. So, it's kind of that dual effect is, one, you're increasing the capacity of 503, 502, but you're also removing some of the people that use it, which, further adds capacity to the intersection. So 5th is really to deal with that sort of local traffic there, let them bypass that intersection so they're not causing, further issues to it.
Yes, go ahead, Shauna, jump on in.
What does that do to the existing green spaces and sports fields and things like that when you punch a road through there?
So we're at survey stage, so we have the survey, so we haven't done any design work, but the road will be right on the north end of the high school. So if you look at aerials from what I've seen, there's a gap in between the fields and kind of where those properties to the north sit. So, we won't have a final answer until we put pen to paper and get that design done. But to me, it looks like there's at least a good chunk of space in between the fields and the properties where the road can go and have, a lower impact to those surfaces. But the final, once we get into design, we'll have the final kind of answer to that question.
Okay, thanks.
All right, anybody else? Yes, go ahead, jump on, Tricia.
Quick question for a newbie here. I need clarification as far as this evening, we're going to be listening to a lot of letters. Will we have to pull this precise situation out of the budget, make a motion to retract this? How? I need to make sure I know what I'm doing tonight if it comes to the table. Do we have, are we voting on this individually? Do we have to pull it out if there's questions? Can I have some verification on that?
Well, from a budget side, it's pretty simple that we would just remove it prior if tonight, if it goes through that it's part of the transportation plan that's coming before council tonight. So if it's taken out of that, at that point, before the budget comes back, that kind of takes care of the budget piece. I would take it out before the 6th. So if that's something you guys want removed, that's the time to have that conversation and take that vote. And I'll let Mark speak to that side of things. But from the budget side, that's what's going to drive me. If it's not in the plan and we don't plan on moving forward with it, I take it out.
And I don't believe that Mark, are you asking for a motion tonight on the transportation plan, or is it just the public hearing?
It's just the public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, and so Tricia, just any council member could make a motion to have that taken out. So, I mean, that can happen, or to direct staff to have that taken out. So that can happen tonight if that's something you or anybody wants to make the motion to, and get enough colleagues to go with it. So. Okay,
Mr.
anybody
Mayor.
else?
Adrian, can I
Hey,
make
Mayor,
a
I got a
comment?
question
Yeah.
for Mark.
Hey, yeah, go ahead, Brian, jump on in.
Mark, a couple of years ago with this project, when it was talked about, we also talked about a phased approach, connecting the parking lot where the students are at, since that's the biggest limiter there, and just connecting that out to 503 without doing a punch through all the way to Parkway. Is that phased approach still on the table, or is that out the window now?
You know, again, we've done the survey for the whole thing, so that's what we're looking at. But once you get into actual design, you start to look at things like that, some of the details about, you know, should it be phased? What connections should you make to the roads to the north? Those sorts of things. So to me, we're not quite far enough along in the process to start making those decisions, but that would be sort of a natural part of that process.
All right, thank you, Mark.
Shane, go ahead and jump on in.
I'm good. I'll just comment tonight.
Okay. All right, anybody else? Okay, Megan, did you have anything else?
No, I will bring the budget forward as it's presented tonight on the 6th as well, unless we obviously have something happen that the big project needs to come out. And that doesn't mean at the time of adoption that somebody can't bring it up at that point. For those that are new, that you could say, I would like to remove this. I'd like to make a motion to remove, say, if you wanted to remove an FTE, this FTE, and then adopt, then at that point you can seek council approval and so forth. So that can happen at the time of adoption as well.
Okay, thank you. All right, council, we have about 11 minutes till our regular meeting is slated to start. So let's go ahead and take an 11-minute break, and I'll see everybody back here.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, council, staff, and members of the community. I'd like to go ahead and open up our November 15th, 2021 Battleground City Council meeting. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, if I can have the city clerk, please take roll.
Certainly. Mayor Cortez,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
and Council Members Munson,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
DeRocher,
Here.
Walters,
Here.
and Davis.
Here.
All right. Summary reports and presentations. So council member reports. Councilmember Walters.
I attended the mosquito control district meeting last Monday or last Tuesday, and we discussed budget and are working on, we've tabled it, but working on electing a new board president. Our current board president has decided to retire. So that's all I got.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Walters. Anybody else? All right, seeing none, I will go ahead and move on to the mayor's report. Council, I don't have really anything to report back, other than I do have two proclamations that I'd like to read into record. The first proclamation is for World AIDS Day, and starts off by saying, whereas HIV, which has been silently spreading across several continents, finally came to the international medical and science community in the early 1980s. And whereas HIV has affected an estimated 79 million people worldwide, including some 14,000 in Washington state. And whereas HIV/AIDS related diseases have caused the death of an estimated 36.3 million people worldwide. And whereas the 2021 theme for the World AIDS Day is Ending the HIV Epidemic, Equitable Access, Everyone's Voice. And whereas in some places, the rate of new HIV infections seems to have stabilized in very recent years, the Black and Latino communities are disproportionately affected by HIV/AIDS in Washington state. And whereas much work is still needed to spread the knowledge of HIV and HIV testing and prevention among adolescents and young adults. Now, therefore, I, Adrian Cortez, Mayor of the City of Battleground, do hereby proclaim December 1st, 2021 as World AIDS Day in the City of Battleground. I urge the people of Battleground to remember those we have lost to HIV/AIDS related diseases, to educate ourselves to end the stigma, and to get actively involved in the global efforts intellectually, socially, financially, and politically to support those who are living with HIV/AIDS and to eradicate this health disparity worldwide. All right, and then my second proclamation is a proclamation of International Day of Persons with Disabilities, or as I like to refer to it, as individuals with differences, learning differences. Whereas the annual observance, of the International Day of Disabled Persons was first proclaimed in 1992 by the United Nations General Assembly. And whereas the observance of the day aims to promote an understanding of disability issues and mobilize support for the dignity, rights, and well-being of persons with disabilities. And whereas the day seeks to increase awareness of gains to be derived from the integration of persons with disabilities in every aspect of political, social, economic, and cultural lives. Now, therefore, I, Adrian Cortez, Mayor of the City of Battleground, do hereby proclaim December 3rd, 2021 as International Day of Persons with Disabilities. And in doing so, I call upon employers, schools, and other community organizations in Battleground to observe this day and to advance its important message that people with disabilities are truly equal to all. And that ends my portion of our proclamations that I am reading into record. Moving on to presentations. I'm wondering, Council, we've had a significant amount of interest in a small segment of a larger transportation project here in our community. And I'm wondering if right now would be a good time to just have staff present very briefly on the project that has garnered some recent attention. So if I could perhaps turn it over to Ms. Erdman, and if you could just talk very briefly about the road that has garnered so much attention. So.
Yeah, so just to summarize quickly, the Northwest Fifth Avenue has sparked some attention over the last few weeks. It is part of our overall transportation system plan. It is also part of the larger Connect Washington plan that we've been working on, I believe, and I'll ask Mr. Herseg to chime in here, but we received Connect Washington dollars on this project back in 2000.
It's like 17, I believe. something
Yeah.
like that.
So it's part of a larger plan that is to alleviate the congestion at 502, 503. The first part of that took the signal out at 12th Avenue. We also have projects planned for 15th Avenue first, and then the new connection 5th behind Fred Meyer. The new lanes that will be added to 502, 503, and then finally the final phase of the project being the Northwest 5th Avenue to alleviate congestion into the intersection from the high school. This is all part of a multi-phase plan that is funded by Washington State at this point. We have been lobbying additionally to increase the funding for the project due to inflation. So Mr. Herseg, if there's any other highlighted points you'd like to add to that briefly, or?
No, I think that covers it pretty well.
Okay.
If you have any other questions, we're happy to answer.
Yeah, and go ahead, Councilmember DeRochers, go ahead and jump on in.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it after our study session, and this is we're kind of obligated to do this, to work with the plan for WashDOT, correct? Like, this was all part of a big plan. We worked with them, and we've been working on trying to build a relationship with WashDOT. So I'm kind of concerned if we decide to pull the project, what that will do with our relationship with WashDOT in the future.
I think one of my bigger concerns is, we've lobbied for this project for quite some time. We were successful with the Connect Washington, and we've been asking for the last several years for the inflation dollars. And this, we've sold this project as an overall solution to the problem. And so if we start taking out pieces here and there, then we're really not sticking to the overall project that we've been requesting.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Councilmember Walters, please jump in.
With that said, Mrs. Urban, these are not new concerns that we're hearing. We got a lot of emails today based on the fact that we're discussing the transportation plan, but this is something that I've been hearing about since before I came on council. So I'm just curious as to what type of communications and outreach we as a city have had with the rest of these residents who are very concerned about a new road going through their neighborhood, the green spaces, the schools, the safety concerns. What kind of communications have we had with them to ease their minds or to negotiate or anything of that nature?
Yeah, and we definitely haven't gone to them recently because, like we've discussed, this is the last phase of the project. I know there was a lot of discussion about this section of the project at the very beginning when we were first shopping this. I wasn't with the city at that time, so I may refer to Mr. Herseg and maybe some of the other council members that were a part of those discussions, but I know there was quite a bit of outreach and communications back at the time where we were going for the Connect Washington dollars. And Mark, if you want to elaborate on kind of what the outreach was at that time.
Sure. So when we first kicked off the project, we did some open houses about the overall. So all 6 or 7 phases that there are, talked about those, kind of did, drawings, open house, those sorts of things, and showed it. As each phase comes up, we do our typical outreach, which is open house, mailers, website, newsletter, that sort of thing. We're not at that point for this particular project because it is the last phase. I would see that happening next year because that's going to be the heart of the design. So that's typically when you do those sorts of things, the open houses, outreaches, and that. So that I would expect to happen next year as we get to that part of it. But it was included in the original open house to kind of introduce everything, but the project specific will be next year.
But would that not be too late at that point, once the open houses begin, to make any changes to it?
No, that's the point of the open house. So essentially what you do is you get to about 30 to 50% plans, kind of concept drawings, and then you bring them out to the public and say, hey, here's what we're thinking, provide feedback on that. And so, that's where you can get to, hey, I think this should be, there should be a connection here, not a connection here. I think you should move the road south to avoid this. Did you know about this, obstruction and those sorts of things? So you don't get so far along that you're stuck with where you were at, but you have enough so people have something to visualize. So, they have something to see and then they can provide feedback based on that. And that's standard practice for any project.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Walters. Deputy Mayor Johnson.
I was just going to say, starting in 2013, we met at Fred Meyer. We met at City Hall. We had open houses at those two places. We also had at Safeway. We also own a piece of property, for those that don't know, on the corner of Parkway and 6th. It's right next to the retirement. No, it's not a retirement facility. It's a what do you call those places?
I think it's a rehab.
A rehab, thank you. We own a piece of property next to the rehab facility. We bought that piece of property in 14, I believe. It went up for sale with the idea this was coming. We also talked with folks as they came to city council in 13, 14, 15. They went to the state legislature twice, I believe, spoke to the local representatives twice. So up until, since that point, since 14 or whenever that was, 14, 15, we haven't mentioned it because, again, it wasn't going to happen for years. And so all of us, four or five of us, have gone to Olympia over the years. This is what we sold. And I'm hoping that we continue to keep it intact, because I think if we ever went back to Olympia after we reneged on this, I don't think we'd ever see another dime. So that's as far as I remember, Ms. Walters, and that's been 7-8 years ago.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Johnson. Councilmember Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To kind of go along with Mr. Johnson, when we were trying to find a project that would fit the Connecting Washington money, and what they were looking for, this is the 12th Avenue signal was their number one priority. That was supposed to go out long before it went out. That was a Washington State project. 502, 503 is a Washington State project. Even 15th and 1st is because of a Washington State project, because of 12th. So these are things that the state had mandated us to do. The challenge is we were trying to find something that would benefit also the city of Battleground. At that time, we had met with, not only the neighbors didn't really come in until after the project was on the Connecting Washington, but we had met with business leaders, we had met with community members, we had met with our state representatives. They had a state transportation chair of both the House and the Senate, and a bus touring throughout the state to view these different projects, to rate these projects and what they thought should get this money. A lot of these projects, we had projects in the county that at the time the county was not playing very nice with the state, and the 179th Street project was put down the list quite a bit further in this 20-year package. It was put towards the end of it. And after everything came out and the projects came out, of course, they wanted that moved up. So you have there was a lot of factors that went into getting this money. And for the state, for us to go up there to our representatives and tell our representatives we need your help to get more money because of the fact of inflation, everything else. And they've went and fought for us, and we've come fairly close on different projects, and we're still doing that with our lobbyists. From a state standpoint, it's a little bit of a slap in the face to our state representatives who have been fighting for that. The other thing that people aren't talking about, the neighborhood wants to talk about how it's going to tear out fields, tear out, we're not going to have open space. We're not going to have any of this. We hear that every single time we have an annexation, that the neighbors come in and say, you're destroying my view. I'm not going to have, 40 acres of trees next to me. Someone's going to build, a big house there and destroy my view. There's no designs yet on this thing. The issue that we're having is the reason the neighbors are upset is, and I would suggest council go do this if you're not familiar with this project, is go walk that fence line and see how many of those neighborhoods or those neighbors' fences open up onto the school property. So they have gates onto the school property, and it's their opportunity to go run their dogs, walk out there, do whatever they want. And I understand that you have a road going through there that's going to change that. But we've heard over the years, we've heard so many different things, whether it's how are kids going to cross the road? There's other projects that were associated with this. I know the YMCA at one time was looking to use the Louisville campus if this project went in, but they need access. We've had businesses that have actually moved out of town because of the traffic that happens on Main Street from 2:30 to about 4 o'clock, and especially around Dick's Tire where some of our contractors fuel up. So these are all things that went into this that I know a lot of council hasn't had the opportunity to be involved with, because this was on the tail end of this plan and now it's coming up again. So I think it's important that we remember that, and that we understand that this money, if we take this off our plan, this money goes away. We don't get to pick and choose where we use it, because that's like saying, hey, asking your mom and dad or, the bank to buy a house, and here's what I want to buy, and then you go buy a car with it instead. It's not going to work. The state's not going to allow you to do that. They're going to take that money back, and all the taxes that we've already paid in for that gas tax, our citizens are going to not benefit from that from a traffic reduction standpoint. So this is not just a easy, hey, we don't like it, and 30 people in a neighborhood don't like it. You got to think about the whole system and what the rest of the citizens, like I said before, the people on the west side of town don't really care. They don't care that it's going by your house. And that's the challenge. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right. Does anybody have any questions for the city manager on her brief summary of the item that's gotten a lot of attention, the road? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Aaron, for that summary. Didn't mean to put you on the spot there, so. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. Citizens communications. So I will go ahead and ask the city clerk if we have any communications that have been sent to us to be read into public record.
Yes, sir. Actually, we have one for citizens communications, and then there are several for the public hearing that we'll read under the transportation system plan. While it talks a bit about budget, might just be easier to read them all together.
That sounds fine.
Thank you. So this one is from the Board of Battleground Center Master Association. Keith Stewart, President, Matt Ward, Vice President, Camden Spiller, Treasurer Secretary. With regard to a potential development agreement, which would grant a special exemption from zoning requirements to allow an additional 140 unit, 3.5 acre apartment complex in the downtown commercial zoned area of Battleground Village, the Board of the Battleground Center Master Association offers this letter for the council's consideration. Whereas the city and the association have invested significant effort in encouraging the right balance of commercial, residential, retail, light industrial, recreational, and public uses, such as the Battleground Public Library, which are most suited to the city's comprehensive plan and the board's vision for the village. And whereas departing from existing zoning to accommodate another apartment complex would raise potential concerns of safety, infrastructure, compatible use, and the worsening of an already troubled parking situation. And whereas a special exemption is not necessary to support development as evidenced by recent construction projects, we are proceeding to occupy adjacent lots in various manners consistent with the existing zoning. And whereas this special exemption to the zoning requirements, if granted through a development agreement, would be unfair to nearby property and small business owners who have made their investments conform to existing zoning and with reasonable expectation that adjacent property owners would not receive special exemptions from the same. The board unanimously offers this letter in support of uses which conform to the existing zoning downtown requirements and against a development agreement which allows this key parcel to be exempted from the requirements that prohibit high-density ground floor housing projects. We respectfully request that the City Council decline to grant a development agreement to accommodate another apartment complex in Battleground Village and simply allow the existing zoning to determine acceptable uses in these final stages of the village's development. That concludes the citizen communication.
Okay, thank you so much. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak before us this evening? All right, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the citizens communication and moving on to our consent agenda. Council, looking for a motion to approve our consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion by Deputy Mayor Johnson. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Council Member Bowman. If I can get a roll call vote on this motion.
Certainly. Deputy Mayor Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Cortez,
Yes.
Council Members Bowman,
Yes.
Munson,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Walters,
Yes.
DeRochers.
Yes.
All right, consent agenda passes unanimously. Thank you, council. All right, moving on to our first of many public hearings that we have scheduled for this evening. First one is our 2022 preliminary budget. This will be a presentation and a public hearing. I will go ahead and turn this over to our Finance and Information Services Director, Megan Lauer. Megan.
Thank you. So council has an opportunity to accept public comment on our 2022 preliminary budget. It will be back before council on the 6th for another public hearing and adoption. So staff recommends that a public hearing be opened.
All right, thank you. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and open up the 2022 preliminary budget hearing. And I will ask the city clerk if we have any items that have been sent to be read into record on this item.
Not directly, sir. I was going to read all the ones through the transportation plan, and some of them did just intimate about the budget.
Okay. All right. Anybody in the audience wishing to voice or have their voice heard on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing for the 2022 preliminary budget and open it up to council. Council. All right, seeing nobody chime in from council. Ms. Erdman, when is this scheduled to come back on our agenda?
It'll be back in front of you on December 6th. They'll have another public hearing and then up for a motion.
Fantastic. All right. Moving on. Our next item is our Fire District number 3 capital facilities plan and impact fees. Again, this is a presentation and public hearing. So council, we're going to be presented with information and accept public testimony on the proposed CFP and related impact fees. I'll turn it over to our Community Development Director, Sam Crummett. Sam.
Good evening, council, interested citizens. Before you is
the capital facilities plan. Scott Sorensen, Fire Chief, and Chris Drone are also in the audience. They've presented this plan before you at the last meeting. This evening, they're here to answer any questions you may have. And at this time, we're asking for the council to open up a public hearing to consider any public testimony.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Crummett. So at this time, I'd like to go ahead and open up the public hearing for the Fire District Number 3 Capital Facilities Plan and Impact Fees. I'll ask the city clerk if we have any items that were sent to be read into public record on this item.
No, sir.
Okay. Does anybody in the audience wish to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing for this item and turn it over to council. Council. Deputy Mayor Johnson.
Chief Sorensen, I see you're here. Have you made any headway with the county?
We have not at this point.
That's a little disappointing to me in the fact that since we share services and half of the district is in the county, it certainly would help us out in the city as well if the county participated in this, making sure that what projects you need out in the county, since trucks go back and forth, obviously there aren't city trucks and there aren't county trucks. And so is there a plan to hit them in January, or I don't want you to give away the plan, but is there a plan to try to move forward with them?
There is. We're working with other agencies in the county to meet with them and share our plan and request that they collect those fees for the second time. But at this time, we're working with other agencies to do that together.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Johnson. And I'm going to go ahead and pause really quick before any other council chimes in. I just had I believe a citizen just messaged me on our private chat, and apparently he did want to testify. So let me go ahead and open up the public hearing on this item. And then if I can go ahead and have, I believe his name is Mr. Justin Wood, go ahead and feel free to put your input on this item.
Thank you so much, Mayor Cortez. Good evening, Mayor Cortez and fellow city councilors. My name is Justin Wood, speaking on behalf of the Building Industry Association of Clark County. Impact fees are an important source of revenue for many local jurisdictions. They pay for added capacity for new residents and system improvements for existing residents. What is proportional between new residents and existing residents is a complicated matter. While the impact fee increase presented here tonight is not unreasonable, it does raise questions about housing affordability, fairness, and transparency, as well as proportionality. Every impact fee increase that this council adopts is passed on to each homeowner or renter at the time when we are facing a housing affordability crisis. More than half of all new homes in the United States are being built in the southern United States due to regulation, cost, and time. These are huge barriers for our members here in the state of Washington. The impact fee increase before you tonight would include a 25% increase on single-family residents, 31% increase for multifamily residents, and a 41% increase on non-residential. The council should consider a reduction of the multifamily fire impact fee, given that those calls amount to 8% of all calls by land use. In addition, the non-residential impact fee should increase, given that 41% of all calls by land use are non-residential. In closing, I hope the council considers the following points of housing affordability, fairness, proportionality, and transparency for both fire services and the upcoming Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Capital Facilities Plan update. Thank you so much for the opportunity to participate.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Wood. And I will go ahead and close our public testimony at this time and open it back up for council. Council.
May I ask again?
Oh, yes, Deputy Mayor Johnson, feel free.
Ms. Lowry, would you do you happen to have what what the fire department's asking per house. I can't recall the number.
Give me one quick second and I can have that number for you.
$196 per single family home.
$196, $200,
$600.
600. Is that what you said? I'm sorry.
$696.
$700. $700 to seems like and Mr. Wood, I do appreciate your coming on here. $700 to ask a new resident to help with new fire trucks, new fire services seems to be a small amount of money in the big scheme of things. Unlike our friends in Camas, as Mr. Wood probably knows, we've not yet got to the point of having fire suppression systems in the house. We may never, who knows? But for me, I believe it's a fair ask. $700, especially spread over 30 years, is not that big a deal. So I appreciate the fire department, Mr. Drone, Chief Sorensen, and I think this is probably a bargain in the big sense of things. So thank you again, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Johnson. Anybody else from council like to provide some input on this, comments, questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any. And Aaron, when will this come back before council?
Mr. Mayor, Ms. Walters has her hand up on the screen.
Oh, did I miss you, Ms. Walters? Oh, okay.
So this comes back for adoption on December 6th.
December 6th. Okay,
Yes.
very good. Okay, moving forward to our next item. This is our transportation system plan. This will be a presentation and a public hearing. Council, we're going to be presented with information and accept public testimony on the proposed plan. I will go ahead and turn it over to our Public Works Director, Mark Hersig. Mark.
Good evening, council. So since we last met, there were a couple updates to the transportation plan. The TDM table was reordered based on the Planning Commission recommendation. The East Main Street couplet study was added to the project list again per the recommendation of the PC. A few of the project costs were updated. There were some missing right-of-way costs, so those were added to it. And then a few projects were either added or modified, and these are based on some development traffic studies that we have. I'll go further into that at the end, towards the end of the meeting. There's a TIP amendment presentation, so I'll discuss those more then. But those changes were made and everything else was left the same, and that's the copy that's in front of you now. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so at this time, I'd like to go ahead and open up our public hearing for the transportation system plan. I'll go and turn to the city clerk and ask her if she has any items to be read into record on this item.
Yes, sir, we have several. From Rose Rooney. As a Battleground resident, I oppose the construction of the Northwest 5th Street project. This project is not only a poor use of our funds, but will eliminate fields that are used for our youth sporting activities on a regular basis. Our Battleground youth need to feel valued and cared for by our community, and this sends the opposite message. The creation of this street will cause much more traffic in an area where many children and families spend their evenings involved in sports. This is a poor design and is dangerous for the neighborhood. Please end this project. From James Rooney, it is identical sentiments. From Crystal Smith, I was contacting you as I was made aware of this project is still being looked on as an option. I wanted to express my concerns over the increase of through traffic right next to several schools and sports where many kids tend to congregate and be walking on foot. It is also important that we be creating more opportunities for our young people to be healthy participants in activities, not take away more by reducing the amount of soccer fields available. From Sandra Carterbury, please reconsider building Northwest 5th Street and also opening 2 side streets. As a proposal for Northwest 5th Street is to be a one-way from the highway to the Battleground High School People will still need to leave the school onto Main Street or North Parkway to go southeast or west. I can see the advantage of a road from Battleground High School to the 503 highway, as it will have people going north not having to go through Main Street or North Parkway to leave Battleground to proceed north. If the side streets such as Northwest 5th Avenue and Northwest 4th Avenue are open to traffic, there would still be people moving onto North Parkway or possibly Ormsdorf, disrupting a quiet neighborhood with no sidewalks for young children walking to and from school use. There are many students using Northwest 5th Avenue to walk to and from and down Northwest 7th Street, neither streets having sidewalks. There are no sidewalks on Northwest 4th. Our neighborhoods are quiet, safe places. We do not need additional traffic to disrupt the safety in this peaceful area. Please reconsider this proposal. Wouldn't it cost less to add to the current street through Battleground High School up to Old Louisville building onto the highway? Thank you for working to improve the roads. We do appreciate it. Could you please do further studies to improve this proposal? Thank you for your consideration. And this is from John and Gwen Furcaron. Dear BG City Council members, as you may know, I am totally opposed to this road being installed. It has the potential to completely change and probably destroy a vital and vibrant neighborhood here in Battleground. We have lived in our home here at 708 Northwest 5th Avenue for the past 30 years. Many children walk past our home each day going to all three of the schools. There are no sidewalks for our kids to use at this time. The traffic is very light on Northwest 5th Avenue, Northwest 7th Street, and Northwest 6th Avenue, and these streets are narrow and should not be subjected to the traffic that would result. If the proposed street is pushed through, it would open up tremendous amount of traffic on all these streets and avenues as they would connect to the proposed Northwest 5th Avenue. Besides that, the community would lose many acres of recreation that our children use throughout the year. This is a bad proposal and should be taken out of the budget altogether. Please don't destroy our neighborhood by doing this. The next is from Valerie Chavez. As a Battleground resident, I oppose the construction of Northwest 5th Street project. This project is not only a poor use of our funds, but will eliminate fields that are used for our youth sporting activities on a regular basis. Our Battleground youth need to feel valued and cared for by our community, and this sends the opposite message. The creation of the street will cause much more traffic in an area where many children and families spend their evenings involved in sports. This is a poor design and dangerous for the neighborhood. From Andrea Parker, City Council members of Battleground, I would like to ask that you please reconsider the proposed construction of Northwest 5th Street. My understanding is that this project would destroy the current athletic fields east of Highway 503. If this is correct, is there a plan for constructing new fields in Battleground? I am assuming this heavily used resource would not be lost forever. Also, as a resident of the neighborhood just north of Chief Umtuck, I experience enormous volumes of traffic which impact this daily during the school year. My understanding of the Northwest 5th Street project is that it would not help alleviate congestion, but rather increase it. My obvious concern is for the safety of the children and family members who navigate the area on foot between their homes and these three schools located off 6th Street. I would assume you've been on 6th Street before and after school hours, but if you have not, I urge you to do so or to speak with a Battleground police officer. They monitor the heavy traffic in this area frequently. Thank you very much for your time. I'm hopeful the final decision regarding the 5th Street proposal will be based on well-being of our neighborhoods. From Kelsey Deacon, hello, I am reaching out as I would like to voice my concerns and oppose the proposed Northwest 5th Street. I would also like my comments to be read at the City Council meeting. There are many reasons why I am voicing my concerns, but one of the main reasons is the use of the recreation fields and the safety of the people that use those fields with the walking path. My family and I live on Northwest 6th Street and the recreation fields are behind us. We see how much those fields are and walking paths are used. All spring and summer and fall long, we get to watch organized events like soccer and football practice and games being played on all fields, especially the field that hosts soccer games, and that would be destroyed by this new road. We also watch PE classes being held on the fields. Ultimate Frisbee is our favorite to watch, along with the high school cross-country meets. It is a joy to see people use these open fields for outdoor fun that is organized and also unorganized, a group of friends using the space to kick soccer balls around or people gathering to set up a net and play volleyball. I also worry about kids walking to school in the morning and the afternoon, both to the high school and middle and elementary schools, along with the people who use that walking path. All day long, there are kids, adults, and pets that use that path, walking, running, biking. Adding a road with no sidewalks makes this journey for kids and adults unsafe. Lastly, I also believe this road does not benefit school traffic at all or traffic in general. I believe there is a better way to utilize this space and also help with traffic. But adding a road or extending Northwest Fifth Street is not the best solution. I believe we can do better for this neighborhood and better for the community of Battle Ground. My children are young, 3 and 1, and I have always envisioned them walking right over the fields to play soccer or to use the field to run around with friends, family members, and our dogs. To see this beautiful space that is used by so many within our community get destroyed for a road that isn't useful or beneficial makes no sense. And like I said, we can do better. This road doesn't just affect my family and the neighborhood we live in, but it also affects the whole community of Battle Ground. Thousands of people use these open fields, and I do not know another place in Battle Ground where this is possible. In the summer and fall, football practice for middle schoolers happens on one side while soccer happens on the other. Literally, the whole field is being used by kids, running, lapping, and enjoying this beautiful space Battle Ground has provided for outdoor fun. Seeing these fields disappear would be heartbreaking for this community, and I will hope you will reconsider this project. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to my concerns. I look forward to hearing from you on this matter. From David Palmer. Good evening. I am writing regarding the transportation system plan and specifically a pair of near-term projects that together add a new road connecting SR 503 to Parkway just north of the Louisville School Complex. This neighborhood collector road doesn't make a lot of sense, and especially not for $4 million. It's destroying some of the community's only soccer fields, requiring the purchase or seizure of substantial portion of the school district's property, destroys the high school softball fields, and removes precious green space, vacant lots, only to serve very few drivers at only one time of day. How do I know? I live in the neighborhood just north of the proposed road, and in the neighborhood is alleging to be served. I like to see the traffic study that justifies this expense and proposes the northbound only right turn on strategy for 503 that makes the road useless for those of us who aren't headed north on 503. Perhaps this new road would alleviate some of the congestion on Main Street and Fifth Avenue, the post office intersection, when the high school dismisses. But in the process, it destroys some of our precious few recreational areas, which the city has cited as vital in its comprehensive plan. There are also better alternatives to the high school congestion, most notably extending Third Way, the road that runs through the high school complex by the district stadium, around to the north of the high school's baseball fields, south of the Louisville School Complex, and directly onto 503. However, it doesn't appear alternatives have been studied. In general, the TSP lacks any sort of rationale for its projects besides that they neatly fill the gaps between existing stubs and roadways. It seems much more prudent for our elected officials to direct limited resources to quantifiable needs than playing connect the dots with asphalt and sidewalks. Instead of building new roads with high price tags, please spend our tax dollars on taking care of the infrastructure we already have. Go take a walk around some of the oldest neighborhoods in town. For example, 7th Street, just north of the high school, and you'll consistently find disintegrating roads that have been long neglected and continue to not make the cut for investments in tens of thousands of dollars, while the city is planning hundreds of millions of near-term projects that are largely new roads. Where will the money come from to adequately maintain those roads once they are built if you don't take care of the roads we already have? Since you have been elected to serve the population of Battle Ground, please direct city staff to remove the 5th Street project from the plan and instead focus the $4 million and many other millions on giving the entire population of Battle Ground the chance to have nicely maintained streets in front of our homes as opposed to building unnecessary new filler and connector roads. The next is from Doug Shannon. I appreciate being allowed by the city of Battle Ground to have comments read regarding the hearings of November 15th into the public record. My first comment regards, this is the 2022 preliminary budget. There is $900,000 budgeted for road project number 5, also known as the Northwest 5th Street. I am requesting that the city of Battle Ground reallocate the $900,000 to find an alternative to the proposed destructive Northwest 5th Street. My second comment regards the transportation system plan. I am requesting that the TSP be amended as to eliminate the road project number 5, also known as Northwest 5th Street. This proposed road would cause considerable ruin to recreational and athletic fields used by hundreds, if not thousands, of Battle Ground citizens. Northwest 5th Street was not planned as a result of any bona fide legitimate traffic study but as a bargaining chip in negotiations with WASDOT. This is from Carolyn. I'm sorry, I don't have a last name. I really wish the city council would listen to the people they are supposed to represent instead of working to create things of their own interest. I have never lived in a city that ignored the wishes of their citizens as completely as Battleground does. Mike D'Alessandro sent out a survey when he was the mayor asking what the people of the city wanted, and expansion and rapid growth was not what they chose. The road north of the high school is also not what families that will end up living north of it want either. People that moved into dead-end streets did it because they wanted to live on a dead-end street where they would not have to worry so much about their children and their pets getting run over by a car. With this road, you plan to connect several of those dead-end streets to it and make them through streets. That totally defeats the purpose of why anyone would wish to live on a dead-end street. There's nothing wrong with dead-end streets. They definitely slow down the mad speeders, of which we have many in this town. I often see people doing 40, 50 down Northwest 7th Street in front of my house. So let's build them another long straight road that they can be speed demons, and let's put it in the middle of the sports field and the schools where our children spend a great deal of their time. After all, why should we care if a few of them get killed, right? We have plenty, so that it won't matter. That is until it is your child. The road will not do what the city council has been promoting it as doing. It will not lessen the traffic on Main Street. The traffic is there because that is where our stores are. It won't lessen the traffic because the people living farther north on Parkway will use it. They already use OnStore. The only people that will really take off Main Street are the ones living in the neighborhood that don't want the road. We like our little isolated world with the lowest crime rate in the city simply because there is limited access to our neighborhood. I expect that the city council will do exactly what the 7 of them wish, never mind what the people of the city that they are supposed to be representing want. They haven't listened to us in 10 years I have lived here. Why on earth would they start now? My disappointment with this city government only grows with time, and yes, I would move out of the city limits in a heartbeat if I could talk my husband into it. But we live in a house his father built and he grew up in, a quiet neighborhood, at least until you put your unwanted by the people road in. From Christina Higdon and family. Dear City Council, I am demanding that the funds for Northwest 5th Street be reallocated to something else. My name is Christina Higdon and I own a home at 718 Northwest 6th Avenue that I've resided in since 2008. I currently love my neighborhood and Battleground, but I bought my home due to it being a dead-end street and near the schools, knowing that there would be less traffic, less crime. My kids and grandkids would be safe playing in the neighborhood. Northwest 5th Street will destroy the character of our neighborhood by greatly increasing traffic as a result of our dead-end streets being turned into feeder streets for Northwest 5th Street. This, coupled with no sidewalks, would make our neighborhood much less safer for our children and grandchildren, whether they are walking to school or playing at home. But the other important factor is it will affect Battleground as a whole, as it would wreck our recreational athletic fields east off of SR 503. These fields are used by the thousands of hours in all by Battleground and the surrounding communities. And once they're gone for good, leaving us with nothing, not to mention our neighborhoods, which will turn to garbage, which in turn will affect Battleground as a whole. I ask the city of Battleground reconsider a better plan other than destroying what is most important to the community. From Jeff Ramos. My name is Jeff Ramos, and I'm writing to appeal to your city council about the proposed Northwest 5th Road. I have had the pleasure of living in Battleground for almost 20 years and raising my family here, and both my kids graduated from our high school. I have also had the pleasure of my home on the end of Northwest 6th and my backyard being school fields west and south of my home. Over the years, I have enjoyed observing thousands of our community youth and adults using these fields for soccer, youth football, and recreational use. I'm willing to bet your kids or friends have enjoyed this use of these fields. I believe these fields are so important with the depleting green space our kids have and the limited space in Battleground. Hundreds of school kids use the bike path between Louisville School and Chief School every school day. And with the construction of Northwest 5th Road, I believe this will decrease the safety of these kids walking and the citizens walking. The construction of a road that goes through school fields makes no sense and puts our kids at risk and takes so much away from our community and will also put more financial burden on our school system. There are so many legitimate reasons not to build road, and the biggest, what it would take away from all the future youth and our community. I strongly oppose the construction of Northwest 5th project. Nolan Hostetler. As a Battleground resident, I oppose the construction of Northwest Fifth project. The existing side streets which connect to Fifth Street are not ready for this increased traffic that it would bring. These are used by many pedestrians, especially by students from the schools. There are no sidewalks, which would seem to be a safety concern. This is a poor design and is dangerous for the neighborhood. Please end this project. From Connie Sheehan. This does not make sense. We have no sidewalks and the children have to walk in the road to get to and from school. This would be so unsafe for all children concerned. We do not need an increase of traffic here. Please do not do this. It is also not a good way to use our funds. We like it the way it is. It would also eliminate the fields the youth use for sporting activities. From Shannon Corbin. My name is Shannon Corbin. I've been a resident of Battleground since the early 90s. My family moved here when I was in middle school and both my brother and I attended Battleground High School. My understanding is there is a proposal to put a road through from 503 to Parkway, cutting directly through the school property. I believe this is not only a bad idea, but a dangerous one. Let me tell you why. I am a member of the Battleground High School General Athletic Booster Club. I run the concession stand for varsity athletic events. That means that I spend an inordinate amount of time at the high school in comparison to a lot of other people. I'm there at varying times of the day and night. When kids are on campus, they are walking everywhere, paying little attention to things around them. This makes for a dangerous situation with cars speeding through to avoid traffic on Main Street. Furthermore, the additional speeding cars down Parkway, which has crosswalks for 3 schools worth of children to cross, makes for further dangerous possibilities. And finally, buses. If you've ever made the poor decision to drive by any of those 3 schools when the buses are on their way in or out, you know what I'm talking about. 2 times a day, 5 days a week, except holidays and summers, of course, the buses are in and out of those 3 schools. It's an absolute nightmare for the local drivers, of course. But I think the aggravation is multiplied tenfold for bus drivers. No one wants to wait for buses, and frankly, more often than not, I've seen people ignore them altogether. They drive around them when stopped, pass them when they are going too slow, regardless of whether it puts children in danger or not. Additional cars making their way from 503 to Parkway just adds more possibilities for dangerous situations. Children are already in enough danger. The small benefit for drivers does not outweigh the huge cost for families and bus drivers. Please vote no on the road through school property. From Carl Mullen. The city of Battleground has proposed a road project between North Parkway and SR 503 for several years. At the first mention of the project, we were opposed to it and we still are today. There are several reasons for our opposition. This location is not necessary because of short-sightedness on the part of the city of Battleground School District. Is a better option was overlooked. That would have been Northwest 9th Street. But to use this location now will destroy sports fields used by our community youth programs and make no replacement fields available. By trying to put this road through and still leave some of the sports field available, the roadway is being scaled back to a narrow footprint. That will make the roadway that is used by trucks, buses, high school students, and residents too narrow and thus hazardous. Opening up streets that are now and have always been dead-end roads will denigrate the neighborhoods for many homeowners. There are better options available to accomplish what the city is trying to do. That would be, according to city administrators of the past, to relieve traffic on West Main Street and the intersection at West Main and SR 503. Extending OnStar from Northeast 42nd Avenue to North Parkway would be a far better option. Another option would be to extend North 5th Avenue from Main to the south side of Louisville School and make a right in, right out onto SR 503. There is plenty of room to accomplish this and not sacrifice any playfields. And according to Washington State engineers, this would be an acceptable option. It would relieve traffic from Main and SR 503 intersection. And with future development that will open up Onsdorf Boulevard from Northeast 142nd Avenue to North Parkway, what the city wants to accomplish would also be achieved. Also opening up Northwest 5th Avenue from Northwest 7th Street to new roadways built out to SR 503 would provide the relief of the city is looking for by providing residents on the north side of Main Street with an option away from Main Street. I realize that quite a bit of work has already gone into this project and the city feels that to not follow through would be a waste. But if we take a look back and see the narrow-minded approach to many other projects, we can see how it would have been better to have planned ahead, done the right thing for the future, and not just done something to get it done, And that is what it seems like is being done with this project. From Kristen Parkin, we do not need a road from Parkway to 503. I oppose. I do not know that there has been way too much growth without proper infrastructure, and we need roads, but not through our much used green spaces in areas that affect traffic flow. I am not sure who planned the traffic flow around the stores and the new residential areas, but they are in the most areas affected by traffic or residential. How can we get involved to make sure we have proper traffic flow and the infrastructure without interrupting our town, or we will soon turn into Portland and Seattle? From Kara McGee. First of all, thank you for what you do for our city, for the commitment it takes to not only develop, but safeguard our once small community. I am going to begin by saying something that may seem a bit off subject, but bear with me. I have been a Washingtonian nearly all my life, born in Walla Walla, raised in Woodland. I raised 4 children in Woodland and Battleground, 3 of which remain with their families in the area. My husband and I have occupied our home, which shares a property line with the soccer fields for nearly 20 years now, 301 Northwest 7th Street. We have witnessed through our senses the future of Battleground as children and teens growing up and playing in our backyard. Being a former softball pitcher, I smile to myself every time I hear the chatter, "Hey, batter, batter, swing," while working in the yard. Being musicians and former band members ourselves, even as adults, my husband and I have often enjoyed sharing knowing looks during football games when the pep band is on or when it's obvious that someone, usually a trumpet player, needs to tune. My grandchildren and I, pre-COVID, would keep our ears tuned for the marching band and run for all our worth in order to get seats down and snuggle up at the front porch before a parade of middle schoolers passed us by. Yes, often I had to choke back tears. I've been privileged to have a front row seat to a slice of Americana that most people never experience and don't know exists anymore. The other day, when I picked up my puppy from the local vet, I was discussing with our receptionist the value of chipping or not. I was telling her about our beautiful, friendly gray kitty that we had chipped and then named Sally Mae because we had faith that she'd be like our student loans. She'd always find us. The funny story was the gal knew our cat. She remembered her from 13 years ago, getting in the way on the tennis court and visiting the players on the soccer field. We laughed. We had a connection. She had been a student who'd lived out of town, but sports and our friendly cat connected us years later. In a happy memory, sadly, the moral of my story I was telling her was, if someone wants to steal your beautiful, friendly cat, a chip in the neck won't bring them back. You may wonder why I'm telling you these stories. Here's why. If there had been a road between us, I would not have any of those memories. I wouldn't have voted for levies to pass for music and sport. I wouldn't have shared a laugh over a cat named Sally Mae. In truth, I doubt I would have even cared about the futures of the children growing up in my community if there had been a road. But I am also not ignorant of the challenges of living in the middle of the school community and the gridlock that comes with it. I know something has to be done. But is it possible that building the road would just be a shortcut that would lead to future regret? This is a pivotal decision that must be carefully weighed and filtered through something, not just practical pros and cons. With that in mind, I went looking for a filter, a motto or slogan for the community of Battleground, something each city council person could hold before them while making their decision. I went to the city's website to find it and alas, found nothing. I did see an image of the mural I painted on Anderson Dairy years ago with no artist credit in it, and pictures of children playing in parks and advertisements for parks and recreation and city planning, and thought to myself, how can a city that visually advertises itself as a place for family fun, recreation, community, even consider destroying, permanently removing the valuable property that makes all of this possible, a place where an interest and need for community begins in the first place? I appeal to you on the grounds of many logistical arguments you have set before you, mainly the lack of safety on a street that runs due east and west, leaving drivers blinded by the times the sun in fear of hitting a pedestrian. God forbid a child walking to or from school, which leads me to see as a double standard shouldn't a city that requires new housing developers to improve an existing city street by adding sidewalks that lead nowhere, think North Parkway, to be held to the same standard of safety. Doesn't our existing city street deserve an upgrade before any new street, a new development is brought into existence? I spent the last 20 years of my life paying taxes on approximately 12 by 100-foot easement of property that the city has access to for sidewalks. Maybe the city should put the money that I and my neighbors that share the south side of Northwest 7th Street have paid to them to good use, along with the money allocated for 5th Street, and upgrade our neighborhood street to the same codes and standards of safety that they require from new housing developers? Or do the lives of children walking to and from school, the lives that contain the future of Battleground, not matter? Okay, I'm getting off point and my blood pressure is rising, so I'll go back to the question. How do you, as a city council representing the entire community, make such a difficult decision? Since Battleground doesn't seem to have a motto or slogan to filter through, I will refer back to the mural on Anderson Dairy entitled Scrapbook in Time and the words that the late Old Town Battleground Association chose to have me paint over the images of our community past. They are, we stand on the shoulders of those who come before us. Today, the future stands on your shoulders. This is not just any road. This is a road that runs right through the very place where the lives containing the future of Battleground begin, where community begins, at school and on sports fields. Think back to where you began. Think about the future of the life of your children, theirs and theirs. If I could paint one last picture on Anderson Dairy, I would want it to be a picture of today's city council men and women gathered around an aerial map of Battleground with erasers in their hands with the vision to protect the future of the life of Battleground. They would be in the midst of making the bravest and possibly the most important decision of their careers and possibly the most important decision for what the future life of Battleground will be like. They would be erasing that line that was drawn in haste by city planners that just wanted to get home for dinner. A true story told to me by my neighbor who was one of them. He just recently sold his house and moved away. And saying to the future of Battleground, we will not rob you of what is most important in life, relationships, and community. We will take the hard, long road and find a different way. And again, thank you. Be brave. You are in my prayers. This is from Holly Lushan. I am a mother of young kids who lives on Northwest 5th Avenue. Our entire street and neighborhood is full of kids of varying ages. On any given day, you will see kids out playing on our safe, quiet streets and neighborhoods. Most of our streets don't have sidewalks, by the way. There are many walkers and people who utilize our safe streets and neighborhoods to exercise, walk their dogs, and take their babies and strollers for walks. We have quite a few dead ends, which are wonderful as there is no through traffic, making that much safer. Also, Monday through Friday, you will see many, many young kids walking to and from school along our streets as I myself walk my daughter to and from school. When I heard that there is money allocated to put Northwest 5th Street in to connect to Parkway to 503, I was absolutely blown away. I can't imagine the amount of traffic running through our streets and also the safety of the kids and families who utilize our quiet and safe neighborhood streets. It is absolutely absurd to direct this much traffic through a quiet neighborhood and also through a school field. Whoever thought of this idea clearly doesn't care about the safety, quality of life, and the huge disruption in traffic that this will direct and divert through our neighborhood full of kids and ruining an amazing field that we will never get back. Safety is a huge concern of mine. This is not a street and neighborhood that will accommodate this ridiculous notion of adding hundreds, if not thousands of cars a day through a quiet and traffic safe neighborhood and through a school play yard at that. I can guarantee that there will be accidents and injuries if they were to continue as planned. If that happens, which it will be on the city and they're doing without thinking about safety or of its citizens. They will be the ones responsible for any accidents or incidents that occur, which is guaranteed to happen. This will completely change the entire dynamic, safety, and lifestyle of our neighborhood. We moved here due to the fact that it is quiet and safe for our family and our young children, as I am sure that many others moved to this neighborhood for the exact reason. To throw this on us is unfair and unsafe to those who will have to deal with the consequences of poor planning and the lack of thought of safety for our school kids, children, myself, and neighbors. On nice days and not so nice days, you will find many citizens, local and non-local to our neighborhood, utilizing school fields that we fund with our taxpayer money, also sports. I have gone to many soccer games in those fields. Thousands of locals use those fields. The school budget just passed, and one of the things in the bill was to add sports to our school and give our kids those options to play and exercise that they haven't had. Our kids have already been through so much already, and then to take it away with a busy street. You can't find fields like that in many places where locals and school kids can go and have a good time, play sports, ride bikes, and just be outside enjoying our neighborhood and living a good quality life. We need more fields and less asphalt for our children. We use that field personally, and I can't imagine a busy street cutting straight through the school grounds. Absolutely absurd. Who in their right mind would put a busy street through a schoolyard? Safety was obviously not brought into the equation when this plan was thought of. Battleground is growing at a substantial rate without being thoroughly thought out and properly planned. I feel we shouldn't have to suffer the consequences and impact for this lack of planning and explosion of growth that the town can't sustain. This small town isn't a small town anymore, but my neighbors and myself would love to keep our small neighborhood a small and safe neighborhood. Please reconsider directing these funds to a better and safer project. I cannot with good conscience agree to any part of this plan, and I hope that you will take into consideration the concerns and safety of not just myself and my family, but our local school children and those of us who live and enjoy our quiet and safe neighborhood. From Rachel Fleming. Under the city's transportation goals and objectives, goals number 2 states that the city will provide a transportation system that is safe. Goal 5 states that the city will provide a transportation system that balances accessibility and mobility. And goal 8 states that the city will provide sustainable transportation system to minimize adverse environmental impacts and encourage environmentally appropriate design and practices. With that being said, I believe that the city's primary focus should be to invest in the 502 intersection before even thinking about putting a road off of 503 to Northwest 5th that dead ends to North Parkway and is a waste of taxpayer money and the city's time. I would also encourage investing in pushing Onsdorf Boulevard through to Grace, since Onsdorf already has sidewalk and streetlights. When we talk about safety, it makes sense to have sidewalks and streetlights. But if Northwest 5th is made a road from 503 to North Parkway, and then the city would have to make improvements on all the connecting roads to add sidewalks and streetlights, more money and time. Northwest 5th does not provide accessibility and mobility. It will be a road that ends at North Parkway and does nothing. To connect the west to the east, Onsdorf would be able to do that. Lastly, Northwest 5th would have an impact on our environmental and green space. This rare piece of property owned by the Battleground School District allows our children to play safely, soccer, softball, etc., without worry of traffic, and allows the children to walk to school without fear of dangerous traffic. Please consider canceling this road to nowhere and this waste of money, and invest the taxpayer money to improve roads that will provide safety, provide accessibility and mobility, and protect our environment and green space, something that we have been asking the city to do for years. This is from David Fleming. I am writing to express concern regarding the proposed transportation system plan. The proposed section of Northwest 5th Street that would connect SR 503 to Parkway Avenue is not a good match for our community and tax dollars at this time. While the intent is to improve traffic flow by adding another east-west connector, I feel that several issues will arise from this addition, specifically where this road would connect Northwest 2nd Avenue, Northwest 4th Avenue, Northwest 6th Avenue, and Northwest 7th Avenue. None of these streets have sidewalks, and in one case are not paved at all. How much more would it cost to add storm drains, sidewalks, et cetera, to bring them up to code and to connect this new road? Furthermore, I believe that before money is directed to this project, an origin destination traffic study should be done to see how many people would actually benefit from this, as opposed to the extension of Onsdorf Boulevard. Thank you for listening. From Crystal Drake. I am opposed to the proposed road at Northwest 5th Street. I own a home that will be directly affected by this new road. I purchased this home due to a cul-de-sac and the privacy of being backed to the high school. I do not believe that this road will take traffic off of Main Street effectively. A drop-off and pickup only road for the high school that goes from 503 and continues to Main Street past the Louisville campus would make more sense. As an alternative, leaving the existing roads as dead ends and not connected to the new road would be acceptable. Having new traffic flow through these neighborhoods at high speeds, which have no curbs and lots of school-aged children, is not a great resolution. The high school entrance and parking lots are not near the proposed road, and I doubt they will be relocated. I believe this road will end up being just like Southwest Scotton Way, not speed controlled, and will be used as a shortcut and treated like a freeway. This road will create a safety issue for children walking to and from school, as it may have sidewalks, but the existing roads that will be connected to it do not, and therefore the kids will be walking in the streets. The school fields will be greatly reduced. These are used quite a bit in the summer months and on weekends. These are a valued resource to our students and the community. I hope you will really reconsider what the tax-paying citizens of the city desire. There is a better way. We don't have to be stuck with something that was planned 10 plus years ago. From Jeff Courtney, my wife and I are new residents to Battleground and purchased our home because of its features and its quiet, dead-end street location. Now I understand the city wants to add a street between my property and the high school next to our property. I believe this would adversely affect the quality of our neighborhood in several ways. Not only will it detract from the quiet nature of the area, it would make much more dangerous for the children and residents due to the increase in traffic. The increase in traffic would also increase the noise level of the neighborhood. This change would also remove a large part of the school field and green spaces, as well as remove some heavily used bike walking paths that are beneficial to the entire neighborhood. This would also increase the danger to children walking to and from school or playing on the fields and playgrounds of the nearby schools. Please do not move forward with this project, as I believe it would adversely affect the livability of this neighborhood as well as the city. From Kyle Fanning, I would like to, as a proud member of the Battleground community, I feel that the addition of Northwest 5th Street from 503 to Parkway Drive would be a mistake. As the Battleground population continues to grow with younger families, our need for parks and recreational areas is imperative. The proposed Northwest 5th Street would destroy a large portion, if not all, of these recreation fields. These fields are used by organized sports just as they are by our fellow members of the community for exercise and fun. The addition of this road would not only limit the amount of usage on the field, but also make what's left of the fields, if any, much more dangerous. While traffic is becoming a real concern for our town, this road will not provide a realistic opportunity to lessen the traffic. This road will not provide any more benefit that could be found from taking Onsdorf or Main Street. The neighborhood directly being impacted by this road is largely filled with younger children who use the dead ends for safe playing. Removing these dead ends and adding traffic does nothing to help the children, but only puts them in danger. I believe that those in charge can and will find a better solution to alleviating the traffic issues while leaving our recreational fields intact and continuing to provide safe places for our children to grow. I appreciate your time and for taking this into consideration. This is from Richard Kent, and I am a resident of Battleground. Thank you for allowing this testimony, which I submit for reading into the public record. I am against the draft 2022 city budget revenue account 36-0000-3340362 state grants for connecting Washington WASDOT project number Northwest 5th Street in the amount of $900,000. This Northwest 5th Street project has an overall planned estimate of $3.7 million to construct a new Northwest 5th Street from SR 503 to North Park Avenue. There is no transport reason to have a Northwest 5th Street. There is a plausible alternative road solution within the allocated Connecting Washington funding. Battleground residents stated that they want a town and country vision now and in the future. Comments highlighting our vision and action over and over include citizens' desire for good schools, traffic controls, parks, recreation, a distinct downtown, and relationships to arts and entertainment, including food. We are losing our small town country feeling if we begin to slice the current school property into streets, commercial business, and multi-housing. I do not think the vision of the school land being a major company headquarters, a large manufacturing plant, or a compact town center as reality visioning. Such redevelopment of school lands has been stated in previous planning statements. We want the school property to remain intact and as a regional place for pleasant walks, recreation, and open space. We all remember going to a high school event like a Friday night football game. We are facing potential development on huge chunks of land without adequately financed infrastructure. The $900,000 budget for the Northwest 5th Street project can be spent elsewhere. A neighborhood collector is not needed through Battleground School District property by condemnation. Northwest 9th Street, Northwest 7th Street, and Northwest 3rd Way are currently collecting for North Parkway, Northwest Onsdorf, and SR 503. The initial funding and concept for Northwest 5th Street is not based on an in-depth traffic study. It was based on a model, including the need to fit into the Regional Transportation Council regional traffic model. Times and traffic conditions have changed. For example, SR 502 is complete and the Clark County East entrance into Battleground through the Hawkinson corridor has become or should be part of our city long-range plan. Previously, Battleground school boards have not supported the eminent domain of the public school lands with the city. The school land should continue to be a major teaching and recreational sector of the city. Children deserve more than a road cutting through their playgrounds. I urge you to remove the proposed Northwest 5th Street project from the city budget. And lastly, from Kathy Courtney. My husband and I are new members of the community of Battleground. We moved here because of the close-knit community feeling and the small town spirit that Battleground has. Living in a school neighborhood means that it is a family neighborhood full of children of all ages, and keeping these children safe is the #1 priority. Adding a road behind the high school would be very dangerous for the children and would greatly diminish the ability to keep them safe. Please reconsider any plan to add Northwest 5th Street. Thank you for your time. And that concludes the comments made.
Thank you so much, Kay, and kudos for reading all that without even taking a sip of water. Well done.
I'll be
All
doing
right, is there anybody in the audience who would like to say anything further on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will go ahead and close the public hearing for the transportation system plan and open it up to council for council discussion. Council. Councilmember Walters.
I would like to make a motion to remove the 5th Street project from the plan,
From the transportation system plan?
from the transportation system plan, yes.
Okay, I have a motion.
In
Oh, go
addition,
ahead.
I would like to make a comment about something that was discussed earlier, as far as the work that had already been done previously with the legislature. That's our job as council members, to lobby on behalf of the citizens. And when the citizens are this vocal about not wanting something, we need to take a step back and listen to what the citizens have to say. That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Councilmember Munson. Okay, discussion, council. Councilmember Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is discussion on the public hearing, and not on the motion right now. Mr. Herzog or Aaron, do we know how wide the road's going to be?
The section through there is a neighborhood collector, so that's typically 50 feet, including both sidewalks and planter strips.
Okay. Do we know how many softball, soccer fields we're ripping out?
No, we haven't done any design yet, so we wouldn't know the answer to that question.
Are we connecting the 4 streets, 2nd, 4th, 5th, 4th place, 5th, and 6th?
So the road runs on the north side, so it's possible, but again, we would look at that kind of stuff as part of the design. I've seen in a lot of spots where you would not connect all of those to, especially kind of over on the west side, there's 2 where the intersection spacing would probably not meet our standards. So you very likely wouldn't connect both of them.
Okay. So this is going to be a neighborhood connector. What is Onsdorf considered?
Onsdorf's a major collector.
And Main Street?
Main Street's minor or primary arterial.
And Parkway?
Parkway's a minor arterial.
And maybe this is a question for you, Chief, really anybody. When was the last child pedestrian that we had hit on any one of those 3 streets? Onsdorf, Parkway, Main. And have we had any killed? Does anybody know that?
I don't know that off the top of my head. Chief, do you have any ideas?
No fatalities that I know of, and I don't know for sure about injuries, pedestrian type injuries at all, without having to look that up.
Okay. So on Main Street, we have 2 crosswalks, McDonald's and Burgerville, that have crossing guards. We don't have any at Parkway in Maine. On Parkway, we have 1 set of crossing guards at 9th, And I think there's one set a little bit further to the north. There's 10 different roads that come into Parkway and that people can cross the street. On Onsdorf, there's 4 different roads where kids can cross the street from the north to the south to go to Captain, Strong, or Chief. There's only one set of crossing guards there. So I know we got people on council that want to jump onto this and say, hey, we got people commenting and they speak for the whole city. There's 21,000 people in this city. There was 27 comments, some of them duplicates. The same comments that we got last time. Some of them have already designed the road. Some of them have told us where we should put other roads. Some of them have said we're tearing out ball fields, which we haven't even designed. And we have council members that want to pull this from a project because some people spoke up, and it doesn't matter, that we went and got funding for this to improve, and had engineers and had city staff and had people take a look at this to see how it would ease congestion on our main street. We've heard tonight that this is going to be the most busiest road in the city. We've heard tonight that it's not going to be the busiest road in the city. Why would we build it? We've heard tonight that this road's going to be, so wide. We've heard tonight that this road's going to be so narrow you can't get buses or trucks down it. We've heard tonight that we're ripping out ball fields. I would ask my fellow council members who have motioned to take this off, how many of you have sat down with the soccer organizations and the high school baseball, high school softball, those organizations, and talked to them about it and found out what they're being told, because we haven't even designed a road. So we've got people saying we're ripping out ball fields and we haven't even designed a road. And we got people that are saying it's no big deal, $900,000, no big deal, because 27 people in our city spoke. Now I'm going to go back to about 2011, 2010, when we had maybe 30 people show up in a meeting for a skate park. And we spent millions of dollars on a skate park, ripped out 2 baseball fields, built a community center because 30 people showed up for a skate park. Did that represent the whole community? Absolutely not. I'd be willing to say that not too many people on council have friends in that neighborhood or even know people in that neighborhood. But we're willing to kill $900,000, almost $1 million, and pull this project and all the work that's went into it because 27 people wrote in. I would suggest, Mr. Munson lives over off of 20th, so does Mr. Rogers. Go ask your neighbors over on 20th how they feel about a road going in on 5th. Because they've got a busy road as it is. So I think we have to be real careful what we're doing. We have the school district who has some plans for the Louisville campus that would include moving CAM possibly, that they talked about 2 or 3 meetings ago about moving CAM to the Louisville campus. We already know what CAM does on Onsdorf, and we haven't had any fatalities that we know of. So add that traffic to the 3rd coming out at the post office. See, our job is to do what's right for 21,000 people, not to do what's right for 27 people or 50 people in the neighborhood because they spoke. Our job is to do what's right for 27,000 people. So you're fine pulling this and killing, when you have businesses call and say, I sat down with a business owner last week that said he's thinking about moving his business out of town because of the traffic and how he can't get into Dick's to fuel up his trucks. But see, if you don't own a business, you don't understand that. You don't understand that if your employees are sitting there for 15 minutes trying to get out and they're making $50 an hour, that just cost you $12.50 while your employees sat there. But we'll throw out $1 million like it's no big deal. So I think this is great. We have to come up with a plan. That's what this is for, is a plan. Everything else is speculation. So if you're voting against this, you're speculating yourself of what this is. And you don't have the history to speculate. You haven't even been here long enough to know what this project is. So it's ridiculous to me that we think that $1 million is no big deal. But we'll argue about, I guarantee you, we'll throw out $1 million like it's no big deal, and we'll argue about a $1 or 1.63% tax hike on property tax. Mark my words, watch how that goes. It's ridiculous that we're even thinking about that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Bowman. Councilmember DeRochers.
Thank you. As Shane mentioned, I do live off a busy road, so I am very empathetic to everybody's comments that they submitted. However, living in the city of Battleground, I understand that we shouldn't have just certain roads handling all the traffic. That's why we have all these minor arterial roads and everything. So this, like I said, as much as I empathize with the people who submitted comments, I also feel for all the people that are stuck on Main Street and stuck at the post office, stuck at the school, trying to get out of Safeway. That whole section affects the entire city's traffic flow. So it's really difficult. I don't know what the plan is going to look like. I personally am not in a position to want to pull it right now. I'd like to see what all this will entail, how we can work with people that live in the area, the potential of CAM being put in at the campus there, and just clarify that the roadways would actually have sidewalks, correct? So these people would be getting a roadway with safer sidewalks for all the kids going to school. So that's a positive thing there. But anyways, I just want to say that similar to what Shane said, that 27 people versus 21,000 or 21,180, is that what we're up to? People, it's like, I would like to give them, the rest of the citizens, an opportunity to express their likes or dislikes on this. I'm not ready to make a decision other than to just continue forward with it as is. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember DeRochers. Anybody else? Okay, seeing nobody else, if I can get the city clerk to please take a roll call vote on the motion that's on the floor.
Councilmember Walters,
Yes.
Munson,
Yes.
Bowman,
No.
Deputy Mayor Johnson,
No.
Councilmember DeRochers,
No.
Davis,
Yes.
and Mayor Cortez.
No. Okay, motion fails. Okay, and the transportation system plan, let's see here. We are going to have that. Ms. Erdman, when will that be coming back to us?
That will also be back on December 6th.
December 6th, great.
December
All
6th
right.
is going to be a big one.
It's the end of the year. Okay, next item on the docket is our water system plan. This is a presentation and public hearing. Council, we are going to be presented with information from our Public Works Director, Mr. Mark Hersig. Mark.
Good evening again. So since we last talked, we made a couple changes to the water system plan. So there was some missing information and references. So that information was filled in, some minor typos and things like that. So those were corrected. There had been a couple placeholder CIP projects, so that information was added in, and then there were a couple tables that hadn't been added previously, so those were added in. No other changes were made. I do want to point out, so for the water system plan, that will have to go to the state, in particular, the Department of Health. So when we have this on the December 6th meeting, while you'll be approving it, it will essentially be like a preliminary approval. They'll go through their process and review it, and they'll very likely have some changes. So you'll see this again next year after they've kind of done their review. But this essentially would be the draft that would go to Department of Health. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, so at this time, I'm going to go ahead and open up the water system plan public hearing. I'll ask the city clerk if we have any items to be read into record on this item.
No, sir.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing for the water system plan and open it up for council discussion. Council. Deputy Mayor Johnson.
Two things, Ms. Erdman, as we spoke about last time, once this has gone through, wherever it's going through and coming back to us, certainly would like it be put out. I guess we could put it out now for that matter, with the understanding that there's probably not a one of us who hasn't heard from someone close, a neighbor or someone, that we're going to all die of thirst because we haven't made any plans. I certainly would like for us to get out that we have enough water, according to Mark and according to those, up until 2040. Is that correct, Mark? Is that a misstatement?
Now, with the improvements that we show in the plan, we'll have plenty of water through 2040.
Thank you, sir. And then the second thing, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we remove fluoride from our water effective January 1st.
Whole second.
Okay, I have a motion from Deputy Mayor Johnson and a second from Councilmember DeRochers on the floor. And council discussion, Councilmember DeRochers.
Yeah, I just want to say that we brought this up a couple of years ago. We learned that it costs about $33,000 per year to fluorinate the water. The water we're getting from Clark PUD, we're having to add fluoride to that water. We're one of the only municipalities that actually fluorinate the water, and it was originally done for dental hygiene. That need is no longer there, as pretty much every toothpaste you can get has fluoride in it, and it's very accessible to the community. So I don't believe that there'd be any great risk to the community for eliminating the fluoride. It would just give people the opportunity to have unfluoridated water that, you know, they currently have to filter all that out. So it'd be nice to have the option, if you want to have fluoride, to add it yourself through your toothpaste or however. So I am in support of it, purely because I want to have the choice if I have fluoride in my water and or my toothpaste, and also the cost savings of $33,000 per year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember DeRochers. Councilmember Walters.
So that addition of fluoride was done by a vote of the people. Is it a problem that we remove it without putting it to a vote again? I don't know, maybe Aaron can answer that.
Yeah, so I would like, if council would like to move down that path, I think we as staff need to do a little bit more research into the process of and the proper way to do that. So we haven't had a chance to do that at this time. What I would ask is maybe we get a consensus this evening on which direction we want to head, and then we can do some digging and figure out what process would be proper to do that. I don't have that answer for you right now, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anybody else? Councilmember DeRochers.
Yeah, and I just want to say I'm fine either way. If we need to look into this a little further, I'd just be nice to get it moving forward and find out what we can do. So either way, we don't have to necessarily do it today. Just thumbs up is good with me.
Okay, so with that in mind, I have Deputy Mayor Johnson made the original motion. Are you going to withdraw your motion, or what would you like to do?
I mean, we can have a motion, and if it comes back that the city is unable to do that for whatever reason, then it doesn't really matter at that point. We continue with putting fluoride in the water. I don't see us ever running a vote. Why spend, well, I guess we could spend $25,000, $30,000 to see if we want to save $33,000 a year. But I'm just going to roll as I'm rolling.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Anybody else? Comment from anybody else? Councilmember Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess the only thing I would ask Mr. Johnson is, you know, for me, I'd like to hear more from the city, and you know, I'd like to hear from other people before we just kill something. And if it, you know, if you're throwing a motion out there and it doesn't pass tonight, it'd have to be brought up by someone else. So I don't know if that makes a difference or if you just want to put it out there, but I would rather have some more information about it before I just vote yes or no on a motion tonight.
Well, as you know, Mr. Bowman, the history has been with the city that if you don't give them a cutoff time, 45 days in this case, then things just linger and linger and linger. And in my estimation, I believe 45 days, I believe 15 days actually, is probably enough for the city to call Olympia, figure out who's in charge of this and say, oh, nope, yep, nope, whatever it is. And so at that point, I guess we're just giving the city 45 days to come up with something, yes, no, whatever it may be.
The only thing I would interject is, you know, in your motion, you gave a deadline of January 1st. So my only concern is if there is an additional process that has to be done, that's not going to give us enough time to research that and bring that back to you for that process. So that's the only thing to consider, just because I don't know what this looks like at this time.
Okay. Well, okay, Ms. Erdman, then Mr. Mayor, I'll withdraw it and just go for thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever it may be. But please, Ms. Erdman, please,
Yes.
let's not drag this into this time next November when we're still asking about Florida.
No, we will get the information and present that back to you so we know what steps need to be taken to make this happen.
Perfect.
Okay,
Therefore, I withdraw, Mr. Mayor, withdraw the motion.
Okay, so the deputy mayor has withdrawn his motion. Councilmember DeRochers.
Sorry, I was just gonna suggest amending the motion, but we don't need to do that now. So thank you.
Okay, all right. And Aaron, we will get this on the most quickest manner fashion in terms of a future agenda, so.
Yeah, it would probably be good to just get consensus if council, you know, the majority of the body wants to move forward in this direction. So then we know we're not spinning our wheels, but we will definitely, if that's the direction we want to go, get this as soon as possible.
So council, with a thumbs up or thumbs down, thumbs up, we want to get more information on this and have this brought at a future agenda. Thumbs down if we don't want to discuss it at all. Okay, it looks like we have consensus, Aaron.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, and in terms of our water system plan, that will be coming up on our December meeting as well.
Yes, December 6th.
Yes. Okay, next up is our water use efficiencies goal. This is again a presentation and a public hearing. I will go ahead and turn this back over to Mark Herzig.
In terms of the water use efficiency goals, we have not made any changes to what was previously presented. So I don't have any more information. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mark. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and open up the public hearing for the water use efficiency goals. I'll ask the city clerk if we have any items to be read into the record on this.
No, sir.
Okay. Anybody in the audience tonight in Zoom land would like to speak about this? Okay, seeing none, I will go ahead and close the public hearing for the water use efficiencies goal and open it up for council discussion. Council. Okay, seeing nobody chime in. Again, this will be coming up on our December 6th meeting, correct, Aaron?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, next up is our annual code update. Again, this is a public hearing as well. And council, I will go ahead and turn this over to our community development director, Mr. Sam Crummett. Sam.
Good evening again, council. Before we use the annual code update, we've got several sections. I've broken it up into 3 parts. The first part is going to be our general code updates, which looks a whole lot like what we do every year. The second part is the West Side Industrial District, which we've presented that before you at one point. And then the third part is the code updates that are related to our code enforcement overall program that we've been working on year long. I also want to just add that this is also going through Planning Commission right now. They met last week to go over these items. We don't have a recommendation yet. And all of our code updates also have not gone through legal review. So we do expect some changes before we get to a final draft on these. The goal this evening is really just to get the content to you, to give you the big picture and take any recommended changes at this time. So I'll go ahead and jump into the first part, general code amendments. I'll share my screen here. The general code updates this year, I'll go through this table and feel free to ask me any questions as we go through these. I may not be able to see your hand because I'll just be focusing on the text, but go ahead and just interrupt if you've got a question and we'll work through these. First change has to do with our Civil Service Commission. The language here is to make this section consistent with state law. This section hasn't been amended for since 1979, so there's a few phrases in here that are in state law but not in our code. The next change has to do with the city's streets and sidewalks tables. This is just housekeeping. The subsections A and B have been eliminated. And this is to be, these changes are intended to be consistent with how these tables are referenced through other parts of our code. And then there is one section where intersection spacing has been added in this table. This isn't necessarily a new code, it's just being referenced in this table. So that's the transportation section. In our land division chapter, this is where all of our subdivision regulations are housed. We have what are referred to as narrow lot standards. These would be like subdivision lots 50 feet or less. And one of the provisions states that you have to have one on-street parking space per narrow lot. But our code doesn't define where those on-street parking spaces should be. And our hearing examiner struggled with this section a few times this past year. So we're stating that the on-street parking needs to be either on any street within the project site or an abutting street or along streets abutting the project site. Change in our zoning chapter. We refer to a change of use in our development code, but we actually don't define it. this is an important phrase because it's a common term that's used, for example, when you have, let's say, an old house in downtown that's been in residential use since its beginning, but then finally converts over to a commercial use. There's certain code requirements that kick in at those times when a use of property changes. So it's important to have that defined in our code. And then we've updated our street definition to include private access easements to be consistent with how we define it in other places in our code. The next change is in our residential districts as well as our commercial districts. And this results from House Bill 1220. And this is a bill that basically is requiring cities to include more diverse types of housing and not to prevent certain types of housing. I'd say this is part one. We're going to have some more work to do in this next year because it's going to affect our comprehensive plan, and we want to think more carefully about how we implement House Bill 1220. But the first section that we need to get in our code currently, since it's effective as of last month, is that the city can't prohibit what's referred to as transitional housing in any residential district. So we've changed all those prohibited sections to conditional use permits. Transitional housing is defined. I won't go through the whole definition, but it can include things like homeless shelters or drug and alcohol treatment facilities. A conditional use permit would give, this would go to a public hearing where oftentimes there is going to be a real concern with potential neighbors. So that would give them the opportunity to participate in the process. And then a hearing examiner could weigh in those concerns and make a decision. The next change with House Bill 1220 says that if for any zoning district that allows for hotels, then you also have to include what are considered supportive housing, or what our code defines as group living. So practically what that means is in our regional commercial district and our neighborhood commercial district, we would need to allow group living, which includes nursing or convalescent homes, adult family homes. And just as, I guess, maybe a footnote to this, apart from House Bill 1220, every other jurisdiction that I found in Clark County does allow for convalescent homes in most of their commercial districts. So it's kind of one of those uses that is kind of a blend between residential, but it also has kind of a jobs creation function. So it can kind of fit in both districts. But under House Bill 1220, it's now mandated. Next section is within our parking standards. Our code requires wheel stops. This change would allow the wheel stop to go away if there's a curb that's adjoining a sidewalk or a landscaped area. And it would allow the front end or the back end of the car to overhang that landscape area or sidewalk. And then if that was the case, they would still need to, widen their sidewalk to maintain certain ADA distances. And the landscaping, of course, would need to be low growing ground cover if this was allowed. But this is a section of our code we've allowed administratively because it hasn't been very clear, but we've allowed this more specifically in our code now. This section is also in our zoning in our zoning title. It's cleaning up the appeals process, and it also ties in some of our code enforcement work. We're allowing for code enforcement appeals to be addressed in here. We're cleaning up sections regarding subdivision appeals. Those go to Supreme Court. We give some language here on how a code appeal process would work. We've added some things to our tables, such as any kind of, for example, comprehensive plan. Anything related to comprehensive planning can potentially be appealed to the Growth Management Hearings Board. Our shorelines program, that gets, if it exhausts the appeal process through a hearings examiner, then it goes on to the Shorelines Hearings Board. And then code compliance would be appealed to the hearing examiner. This would be at a staff level decision, would then go to the hearing examiner, and then further appeal would go to Superior Court. We also added a section that was inadvertently taken out of our code at some point in the past decade. This is a reconsideration process, which is pretty common section if you have a hearing examiner. This would be a scenario if a hearing examiner made a decision and there was some sort of factual error that was noted, where we or any other person could contact the hearing examiner and ask for the decision to be reconsidered. Here we talk about a refund process. I think this may have come up maybe at our last meeting or planning commission, I can't remember, but this would be a scenario in a code enforcement situation. There'd be an appeal fee, and then if it turned out that the city was wrong in the decision, then the appeal fee would be refunded to the appellant within 45 days. The appeal fee we have in our fee schedule, I don't have that in front of me, but it's I think it's somewhere between $100 or $200. So it's not near as much as like a typical public hearing appeal, which is over $2,000.
Sam,
the last change is eliminating the reference to 2012 in our Western Washington Stormwater Manual and just stating the most recent version. So we don't have to change our code every time the manual gets updated.
Sam, I believe you had Deputy Mayor Johnson had a question before you move forward.
On 17, if you go back just to the last little bit of 17, the question last time was loser pays. Wherein is this that, because for $200 you can roll the dice with the city. We've spent quite a bit of money on our end defending whatever, and if we're wrong, we should pay. But where in here does it talk about if the loser pays for all the fees?
The loser pays up front. So if they want to appeal a city staff decision on a fine or a letter we send them, they pay up front. If it turns out that they're going to pay just to get to the hearing.
No, you're misunderstanding me. The cost of defending this on our end is going to be more than $200. So my question is, just like in court, if you lose in court, loser pays. So where, Christine, or I'm assuming this is coming through you somewhere down the line.
This would come through me. So Councilmember Johnson, I assume what you're talking about would essentially be an attorney's fees provision or a cost recovery.
Cost recovery.
Okay, so we can research the ability for that. In Washington State, we actually, the default is actually each side pays their own costs unless there's a contract where you have a cost recovery or attorney's fees provision. So we would have to look into whether or not we can put that type of provision into a code that would bind parties who aren't necessarily signing a contract with us. But that's something we can look into to see what our options are. I think that there's likely a legal distinction between paying the appeals fees, paying the cost of the actual hearing examiner time versus cost reimbursement. That gets a little bit dicier, legally speaking.
Well, yeah, I mean, how much does the hearing examiner charge us? Roughly an hour?
It's at least two to 300, I would.
And I know he or she, I'm not sure whom it is, has to spend more than an hour on anything. So I assume they're $1,000 a whack. If the city prevails in this, do we pay the guy or the girl as it is now?
We would foot the bill for the hearing examiner time.
So I guess, Ms. Hayes, what I'm asking is, I mean, I'm the kind of guy that would spend $200 just to see if I can, do whatever I've got to do. And then if I lose, I'm only out $200 and whatever else the loss is, I didn't have to pay for the judge.
Absolutely. I will look into, legally speaking, what the extent of cost recovery is that we can include in here. I don't know that it can be a full cost recovery, but we'll look into what options we have.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Sam.
That's all I've got for the general code enforcement updates. Are there any other questions?
Okay, Mr. Crummett, let me go ahead and open this up since it is a public hearing.
I think we still have, Sam, did you want to go through the other two sections?
Oh, did
Yeah,
you
I've
have
got
more,
two
Sam?
other I've got two other sections. We can do three separate public hearings or one.
Feel free to plow right through it, Sam.
Okay, keep moving on. Part 2 coming up. I'll share my screen. Okay, I've presented this before the council on October 18th, so I won't go into a detailed presentation, but I'll just highlight a few items and see if there's any questions. Proposed is a new employment district called West Side Employment. This would replace the mixed use employment district. This is along State Route 502, and then to the north is 92nd Avenue. The southwest corner there is where the Cherry Grove Friends Church is. The goals in this district would be job creation. Again, it'd be primarily designed to have employment uses that would consist of light industrial, not heavy industrial. There'd be limited commercial uses that would comprise no more than 25% of the developed area. And the overall goal here is to create like an office park or light industrial office park. This idea was kind of born out of our land use master plan update. And we've kind of borrowed some of these ideas from other similar types of codes. I'll stop there and see if there's any questions.
It doesn't look like there is, Sam, so go ahead and continue going.
Okay. Share my screen again here. Okay, this is the code enforcement sections in our code that are going to be updated. I am not going to go through all these sections since it's over 60 pages of text, but I'll highlight, I think, what are the important things to focus on. As you know, we've presented several times before the council of what we're intending to do with our code enforcement program. A big part of that is to update our municipal code. Our code's been changed over a few decades in various chapters, each that has language that often relates to different code and code processes, whether it's an appeal or referencing the definition to a nuisance. So in some ways, you know, you look at different chapters and it's like looking into a bowl of spaghetti or something. And we're doing our best to not drive our city attorney crazy. So the two big changes are we've replaced our nuisance chapter and essentially come up with clear definitions so that if we do have to defend a decision before a hearing examiner in court, we've got a better code to work with. And the other section is an entirely new Title 12, which is our primary enforcement chapter. We haven't just pulled these code sections out of thin air. We've modeled much of the work from the city of Spokane Valley, which Christine has experience in working with and seeing that program work. So we're kind of modeling this update off of, you know, codes that have been tested. Many of the sections are the same, the processes are the same. It's just what we're trying to do is add consistency to our process. I'll stop there and see if there's any questions.
Okay, Sam, I'm not seeing any questions. Chime in.
So like I say, there'll be more legal analysis that has been given. We'll highlight some of those major changes if there are any. Planning Commission meets this Wednesday, and hopefully we'll get a recommendation from them. And then we'll bring the final product to you before the end of the year.
Okay.
And yeah, now you can see if there's any interested citizens to chime in.
All right, so at this time, let's go ahead and open up the public hearing for the annual code update. I'll go ahead and turn to the city clerk. Do we have any items to be read into the public record on this?
No, sir.
Okay, anybody in the audience tonight would like to speak on this? All right, seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing for the annual code update and turn it over to council. Council. All right, seeing nobody chime in, we will next have this on, I believe, the December 6th agenda. Yes or no, Ms. Erdman?
Yeah, let me double check on that one. This one does come back on the December 6th agenda. Yes.
All right, great. Okay, that is all of our public hearings. So next we are going into our business. So we have ordinance number 2021-21. This is our property tax levy. This will be a motion. I will go ahead and turn this over to Ms. Lowry. Megan.
Thank you. So before you tonight, you have ordinance 2021-21 for the ad valorem property tax levy for 2022. It is currently set at the 1% plus the bank capacity at 1.639. Where did it go? It's 1.639201%, which is a 0.07 decrease to the millage rate comparative to 2021. Council has the opportunity to pass it as it is presented or do a lesser amount of the 1% or 0. And that's all I have. So just looking for a motion.
Okay, thank you very much. If I can have the city clerk, please read the ordinance by title first.
Ordinance number 2021-21, an ordinance levying the annual property tax to provide revenue for the city of Battle Ground, Washington for the fiscal year ending December 31, 2022.
All right, thank you so much. Discussion before we have, or discussion and or a motion, excuse me.
Move to approve.
Okay, I have a motion to approve by Councilmember Bowman. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Deputy Mayor Johnson. Discussion. Councilmember Walters.
Just a question on, is it moving to approve as is? Or, so
Yes,
as is the $1.60 something?
Yes, the motion on the floor is to approve the motion as it's presented, the ordinance as it's presented in your packet.
Okay, thanks.
Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, if I can have the city clerk please take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Davis,
No.
Councilmember Bowman,
Yes.
Mayor Cortez,
Yes.
Councilmember Walters,
No.
and Councilmember DeRochers,
Yes.
Councilmember Munson,
No.
and Deputy Mayor Johnson.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Mayor, may I make a comment?
Absolutely.
How are we going to pay for those $40,000 polls if our friends who voted for those 40,000 polls won't step up for it? I'm at a loss here that I voted against the $40,000 polls. If we're not willing to ask the people for the money, I don't know how we're going to pay for those $40,000 polls. I assume I'm not going to get an answer, and I really don't need one, but it's kind of bothersome to me.
He's got a right to be there. There's three idiots on
Mr.
there.
Enziga, you're on.
Excuse me, please, this is a council member time. This is not time for the audience to chime in. Thank you.
So it's irritating me that we'll probably end up with those polls, even though Mr. Bowman and I voted against them. And so, Ms. Walters, you wanted the polls. Mr. Munson, you wanted the polls, but you don't want to ask the people for the money. And so I guess it's just the way we're going to play from here on out. But it's very, very disappointing, Ms. Mayor, that that they want to spend the money, but they certainly don't want to ask for it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Johnson. Councilmember DeRochers.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, from the models that we saw, that even with the 1.6, whatever, 64%, the actual cost per thousand's going down. So even though it seems like we're raising it, it's gonna lower it. So it's just one of those tricky things.
Okay, anybody else want to chime in before we move on to our next agenda item? Okay, ordinance passes. Next item, this is resolution number 21-09. This is our 2022 fee schedule. Megan, we'll go and turn it over to you again.
Thank you. So before you have, as Mayor Cortez said, resolution 21-09, adopting our 2022 fee schedule. And council has the option to pass it as presented, modify, or not pass it, and then we'd have to come back with changes. So other than that, just looking for a motion.
Okay, council, we have before us a resolution, looking for a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion by
Second.
Deputy Mayor Johnson. I have a second by Councilmember Bowman. Discussion. Okay, seeing none, if I can have the city clerk, please take a roll call vote.
Deputy Mayor Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Munson,
Yes.
DeRochers,
Yes.
Walters,
Yes.
Mayor Cortez,
Yes.
Councilmember Bowman,
Yes.
and Davis.
Yes.
All right, resolution passes unanimously. Moving on to our next item. This is the 2022-2027 six-year Transportation Improvement Program amendment. We'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Hersig.
Let me share my screen. So we currently have 4 intersections where we collect concurrency mitigation funds. And so concurrency is essentially where we look at the level of service of an intersection. And if it drops below a certain level, we look to improve that intersection. And so right now we've got 4 of them in the city, and you can see they're the green ones marked on the map. And we collect funds from developers as they come in to make those improvements. With a recent traffic study, it's been found that there's 4 new intersections that have this same issue. And so what we're looking at doing is updating our TIP in order to add those 4 new intersections. The 4 intersections are Parkway and Onsdorf. We're still looking at what improvements necessary there, but it's looking like either possibly a roundabout or a signal. The second intersection is Parkway and Rasmussen, which would require addition of a signal. 29th and Main Street, which requires an addition of a signal. And then 503 and Onsdorf, which already has a current failure, and this puts it above and beyond. So this would be an additional fee on top of what we're already collecting. Essentially what would be added there is an eastbound right turn lane and a second westbound left turn lane. That's all I have. I'm curious if there's any questions or concerns about this. If there isn't, we'll bring it back at the next meeting for a public hearing. I'll stop sharing my screen.
All right, Councilmember DeRochers.
Yeah, what does it mean if you have a red and a green circle?
That's the intersection that has the original failure and then a new failure on top of it.
So that's by my house, right? Is that 20th and Onsdorf?
It's Onsdorf and 503.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else? Deputy Mayor Johnson.
Mr. Herzog, did you make, who made the changes to the light there on Onsdorf and 503? The way the lights work.
That would have been the state.
And did they let us know they were going in there to do that?
No, they contacted me when they made some changes to 15th, but I did not hear anything about Onsdorf.
They've changed the lights for the on Onsdorf there so that the straight traffic gets the first light, and then let me make sure I'm saying that right. Yes, the straight traffic across gets the first light, and then the turns get the second light, if you will. And then they've shortened the length that the light runs. If there's only one car and one coming, as an example, one car will make it across, and before that car makes it across, it turns yellow. So I don't understand the system other than the fact that they seem to have messed with it a tad, and it's backing up in the mornings there, as it always has for the school people, of which we've got to figure something out about that. But it's really messing with that in the mornings, and for that matter, the afternoon as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Johnson. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none. Again, that item will be coming back to us. Moving on to administrative reports. Any last minute administrative reports?
No administrative reports.
All right, great. All right, councilmember communications. Councilmember DeRochers.
This is where I invite people to things, right? I don't know if Philip was planning to do this, but there's a senior Christmas lunch, December 13th at 11:30 to 2:30 at the Battleground Community Center. It's open to anyone 50 and older and free. So I just want to make sure that gets out there.
And I'll have the invitations to everyone, all the 7 of us, as well to the city employees later this week or the first of next week. Of course, if we're going to do that, we need to let Ms. Cameron know if there's going to be more than 3 of us there.
Yeah, and just tell your friends, tell everybody. It looks like it's going to be fun. I know I see a lot of people posting online if there's any free dinners for the holidays or anything. So this is one you can tell people about. Thank you.
Thank you. So if you're older than 50, you get the free dinner. But if you're younger than 50, you got to pay. Is that what it is?
Oh, you're not welcome.
Yeah. You can go as like a guest, like Philip thought he was doing for 11 years.
50 in a day gets you in the door. 49 and 364 will not.
Gotcha.
They let me in last week, so they do have
Okay.
exceptions.
Well, I'll try it out. I'll see if they'll let me in.
Gray up your hair, you'll be fine.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none. Council, at this time, we're going to be going into closed session. So pursuant to RCW 42.30.140, City Council will adjourn into a closed door session for contract negotiations for approximately 15 minutes with action to be taken. And let's go ahead and meet let's meet in about 3 minutes in our closed session. So if any one of us needs to take a quick bathroom break, we can do that. So I'll see everybody in about 3 minutes. All right, Councilmember Bowman.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the city manager to sign the contract with the non-rep police union. It's not a union, right?
So let me.
Employees.
Non-sworn, yeah.
Non-sworn police employees.
Okay, so is your motion that we move to ratify the agreement with the Battleground Police Department, Battleground Police Officers Association, non-sworn
Yes.
commission, and authorize the city manager to sign the agreement effective 1/1/2021 through 12/31/2022?
That's what I was going to say. Yes.
Awesome, awesome.
I'll
I have a
second.
motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and a second from Councilmember DeRochers. If I can get the city clerk to take a roll call vote.
Okay, so Councilmember Bowman,
Yes.
Walters,
Yes.
Mayor Cortez,
Yes.
Councilmember Munson,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
DeRochers,
Yes.
and Deputy Mayor Johnson.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, Aaron, you have your marching orders there. Motion passes unanimously. All right, council, our next meeting is December 6th, 2021. Our meeting will begin at 7 o'clock. Buckle up. It's going to be a nice, healthy meeting with lots of stuff on the agenda. So have a great week and be safe out there. We are adjourned.